InDesign is everywhere. It's behind the books and magazines that you read. It's behind brochures, menus, forms, and all the other documents you interact with every single day. And while it doesn't get the attention or the glory that Photoshop and Illustrator often do, InDesign is where all of those things come together. And once you understand how it works, you'll see why it just might be the coolest tool of them all. My name is Khara. I'm an author, educator, and designer who has spent decades geeking out on all things Adobe and helping creatives like you turn confusion into confidence. In this class, we'll be learning real-world InDesign. So instead of just thinking short-term and learning the minimum required to get the job done, we're going to be learning how to build documents that are flexible and easy to manage. Together, we'll build a portfolio-worthy collection of real-world documents, starting with a simple event flyer and working our way up to a 12-page magazine layout packed with the kinds of must-know features and techniques that pros use to build documents that don't just look good, but are also well-built. We'll also create fillable and interactive PDF forms, and even a multi-format social media campaign. Each project introduces and reinforces key concepts for working with text and images, from how to use styles, text wrap, and anchored objects, to clipping paths, drop caps, and automated tables of content. When we're done, you're gonna have a portfolio of real-world projects that you can be proud of. This class is for everybody. Whether you're brand new and you've never opened InDesign in your life, or maybe you've poked around a little bit and thought, nope. Maybe you're someone who knows enough to be dangerous, but you still feel like you don't truly get it. Either way, you're in the right place. All you need is InDesign. The free trial will work just fine, an adventurous spirit, and a willingness to click on stuff. This isn't about memorization or drudgery. I mean, it's InDesign, not Excel. Am I right? It's about fun, discovery, and empowerment. So, jump in, the water's fine, and let's go. All right, so here is a little peek of what we're going to be making. It's a simple little project that will cover a whole bunch of basics of creating an InDesign document. So let's fire up InDesign, and the first thing you see might look like this, or perhaps it looks like this. Either way, we're going to come up to the File menu and choose New, Document. Over here on the right-hand side, the default unit is picas, and we can talk about changing all of our preferences later. Right now, choose whatever unit you prefer. I'm going to work in inches, and I'm going to build a document that is vertical. So the width is going to be 8.5 inches, and the height is going to be 11. If you want to use this mantra poster as wallpaper on your phone or another device, you can also set this to pixels and then enter those dimensions here. We can leave everything else as the default. Down under margins, I'm just confirming the default of 1/2 inch, and everything else can stay as is. We'll go ahead and click Create. Then first thing we're going to do in here is place an image. So we'll come up to the File menu and choose Place. And you're going to want to navigate to wherever you saved the files for this course. Once you get in that folder, you will see a folder called O1 Kickstart. So inside that folder, there are 2 images that you can choose from for your mantra poster. So I'm going to choose this colorful one, and we'll make sure Show Import Options is not checked, and go ahead and click Open. You'll see that this gives us a loaded cursor, so it's ready to place the image. We just need to create the frame that it's going to go in. So let's come up here to this top left margin, and we're going to click and drag down to this bottom right margin, but you'll notice that the frame is locked to match the proportions of the image. So to unlock that, just hold down the Shift key, and now we can drag a frame that fits perfectly within the margins, and keep holding Shift while you let go of your mouse, and that will drop the image in just like so. So you can see that when we unlock those proportions, we're unlocking the proportions of the frame, but we're not messing with the image. So don't worry that you're going to distort it. So InDesign has placed that image within the frame, but you can see that it is still scaled, so it didn't reach all the way to the edges here. To fix that, we want to change the way that that image is fitting within the frame. And for right now, the easiest way to do that is going to be in our Properties panel. So this should be open on your screen. If it's not, you can find it from the window menu under Properties. But down here under Frame Fitting, we have a number of little shortcut buttons, and we can just go ahead and click this first one right there. That tells InDesign to fill the frame with the image proportionally. All right, so this is looking really good. Next, we're going to add our text. To do that, we'll need to draw a text frame with the Type tool. So you can press T on your keyboard to grab the Type tool, or you can come over here to the toolbar and find the letter T right there. So with the Type tool selected, we're just going to come in and click and drag a box, maybe about like that. And you'll also notice over here in the Properties panel that you can choose a font. So I am going to choose Montserrat, but you can use anything really that you want. Helvetica, Arial, Impact, all those will work great for this. Something sans serif that has a thick weight. So I'm going to choose Montserrat Black, so it'll be nice and heavy. Then we're going to make sure our cursor is active in this box. So I'm going to click to put the cursor back in the box, and I'm just going to type, it's not, and I'll hit return, a disaster period. It's hit return again, draft period. To convert all of this into caps, let's go ahead and select all that text. And over here in that Properties panel, under the character settings, you'll notice that there are these three little dots. This is going to give us additional options. So let's click on those three little dots. And here we can see all these little buttons. And this very first one here is, if we click on that, it's going to convert our text to all caps. And now we can scale this up. Also in the Properties panel, right here is our font size. So there's a number of presets we can choose from. I'm going to just go with 48. And we can see that that's a little too big because now it broke into 4 lines, and we want to keep that just 3 lines. So I'm going to tap the down arrow key here to just nudge that. And yours might vary depending on how big you drew your text frame and what font you're using, but I'm going to set this to 47 points so we can maintain our 3 lines. Next, let's select this top line of text and go back over here in the Properties panel. And we want to increase the size of the top line of text so that it fits across the whole text frame. So rather than hitting this up arrow a bunch of times, if we hold the Shift key down and tap the up arrow, it will jump in 10-point increments at a time. So I'm going to hold down Shift and keep tapping until I get it close. Now it's almost filling the width. So now I'll let go of the Shift key and just keep nudging until it reaches. So for me, that's at 104 points. Yours might vary slightly. All right, then we're going to do the same thing for this bottom line of text. So I'm going to hold the Shift key again, tap the up arrow a bunch, and when I get close, we'll let go. I'm at 121 points, but if I do one more, we see that it actually disappears, which means it is too big to fit in the text frame now. So we can drag that back to 121 points. If we need to make the text frame a little bigger, down at the bottom, you can switch back to the selection tool here, and you could just drag the frame a little taller if you need to. Finally, we want the spacing between the second and third line of type to be about the same as the spacing between the first and second line of type. So to do that, we got to make sure we have our Type tool so we can highlight this whole line of text. Let's come over here to our Properties panel, and this area right here, this controls our leading, which is the spacing between lines of type. So to reduce it, we're going to click the down arrow button, and you can see we're just slowly nudging it. Just like with font size, if we want it to move a little faster, we can add the shift key and tuck it up there until it's close. I'm not going to worry about trying to make it perfect, but we can see that that looks much better. And finally, let's make all of this text white. So we're going to click and drag across all of it to select it all. And over here in the Properties panel under Appearance, we'll see that there's a T for type, and it's telling us that this is the fill color for the type. So if we click on this little T icon, it'll pop up our Swatches panel, and we can change it from black to paper, which will make it white. Lastly, under the paragraph alignment down here, we can click to center it. It probably won't change it much, but for those of us who appreciate that, now it is centered. All right, to get out of this text box, let's go ahead and press the Escape key. So that gets our cursor out of there and switches us back to our selection tool from the top of our toolbar. And now we can drag this so that we see our purple smart guides popping on. That lets us know that this is centered horizontally. To center it vertically, we need to first snatch up the bottom of the type frame. To do that, we can double click right here at the bottom center node. Now we see it snatches on up to the text itself, and we can position this up or down until we see those smart guides kick in, letting us know that this frame is centered. To really make this text pop and increase the contrast, we're going to make use of blend modes in InDesign. Yes, believe it or not, InDesign can work with blend modes, similar to how Photoshop does. Before we change the blend mode, we have to tell InDesign what kind of color space we want the blends to happen in. And we can do that from the Edit menu by choosing Transparency Blend Space and changing it from Document CMYK to Document RGB. It's going to look like nothing happened. The next step is where it shows up. We're going to want to open our Effects panel. So we'll choose Window, Effects, and here all we have to do is change this drop-down from Normal Blend Mode to Exclusion. And then we can actually just close this panel. And that's it. Now this white text actually changes color by interacting with the graphic behind it. So you can see here in the middle where it's orange, the text is a brighter shade of blue than on the outside of the edge where it's a dark blue. And if you placed that black and white graphic instead of this one, then you will see an entirely different look. So if we were to move this around, you can see that the text color will actually change. If we drag it off onto the pasteboard here, it just looks white. So this is a cool little trick that works when the text is white. There is something of contrast behind it. And we're in an RGB transparency space setting, and we've changed the blend mode to exclusion. So don't worry, if this all feels like a lot of gibberish, it'll all make more sense later. For now, let's save our work by going to File, Save As. Since I'm going to save this on my local machine, I'll click on your computer. And I would suggest we make a folder to store all of these saved files in. So wherever you want to put it, I'm going to make a folder called Finished Work. We'll hit Create, and we'll call this Mantra. Under Format, we'll choose InDesign Document and click Save. If you love this so much you want to make it a PDF and share it with a friend, just go to File, Export. For format, choose Adobe PDF Print, hit Save. Don't worry about all of this wild looking stuff. Just come up here under Adobe PDF Preset, choose High Quality Print, and hit Export. Finally, if you want to put this on your screen, let's go to File, Export, and this time choose JPEG or PNG, click Save. Either one that you choose, you'll see very similar options here. We're going to make sure we're exporting all pages, which is really just one. And under Image Quality, we can choose Maximum. The resolution, we could also set to any number of things, but if you have built your document to be the size that you need your wallpaper to be, then it should just be fine to leave it to 72. We want this in RGB color space, and we'll click export. All right, my friends. If we go to our folder now, we can see here is our InDesign document, here is our PDF, and here is our ping. How cool is that? You already made your first InDesign project. Now, to make more sense of all of the things we just did, let's dive in with the rest of the course. Now that you've done the Kickstart project, you've had a taste, a little glimpse of what InDesign can do. So at this point, sometimes people start asking questions like, okay, but why InDesign? Like, I could have made that poster in Photoshop. So let's have a little chat about it. What is InDesign really, and how does it fit into the rest of the Adobe ecosystem? That's a really great question. So at its core, InDesign is layout software, right? It's used by pro designers to build all the kinds of things we've talked about, like books and magazines, catalogs, and other longer, far more complicated documents and publications. So there's definitely some overlap with other Adobe apps. For example, you could make a flyer in Photoshop or Illustrator or InDesign, or even something like Adobe Express or Canva. And any one of those tools would be pretty okay for a flyer. But when it comes to multi-page documents, InDesign is in a league of its own. So if you think about building a catalog or a yearbook, I mean, you could maybe pull it off in Photoshop or Illustrator if your life depended on it, but wow, it would not be fun. So it would kind of be like trying to write a novel using the Notes app on your phone, or washing your car with a squirt bottle. It might technically be possible, but once your project gets bigger or it needs more structure, you're going to wish you had a tool specifically built for that task. And that's what InDesign really is. So while Photoshop is built for pixel-based image editing and Illustrator is built for vector artwork, InDesign is where you put all of that together with text. So it's kind of like a big old mixing bowl where you combine images and graphics with text in a systematic way with the goal of creating robust multi-page layouts. And now you know. Thanks for the chat. Hope that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, friends, are you ready for your first client? Allow me to introduce you to the Random Project Generator. So there is a link here in your project guide to the Random Project Generator. And when you get there, you're going to see all these different courses on the left. You're going to find InDesign Essentials, and then just follow whatever instructions and click Generate My Project. Then you're going to see a one-of-a-kind brief giving you background on who your client is and what they are looking for. So here in my case, you can see that the client is a chic letterpress studio in Nairobi. It's called Hillside Letterpress Studio. It's a well-loved pillar of the local community, and this is what they're looking for. Their vibe is very chic and reflects their specific locale. So yours is going to be different, and that is part of the fun. Everyone's is different, and that way no two people in the course will be approaching the projects from the same angle. And also, when everyone's finished, their portfolio pieces are going to be different. It's pretty slick, right? Now, you might be tempted to come over here and hit retry until you get something that sparks an idea or just feels like it would be easy. But in the real world, that's not how it works, especially when you're just starting out. So don't shy away from whatever you get just because it feels unfamiliar. Ultimately, the briefs are all going to be pretty similar anyway. They just have a few different variables in the mix. whatever you do, don't click retry more than twice, okay? Do not click it 3 times. I'm just gonna put that out there. All right, so when you're ready, you can download your brief as a ping file, or you could copy and paste the text into whatever other app might make sense where you wanna save it for easy reference. So when it comes time to find images and other assets to use for your projects, my 2 suggestions are to check out stock.adobe.com, and you'll have to log in with your Adobe ID. And then down here, by default, this is set to all, but they have a massive collection of images and video and all kinds of things that you can license for free. So for example, for this letterpress studio, I would come in here and search the free collection, maybe for letterpress. And I'm going to start to see all of these images that I could use in the project. So over here on the left, you can filter for the kinds of things that you're looking for. And then, just have fun exploring. And when you find an image that you like, you just hit download, and that will actually add it to your Adobe account for free and download it to your system, and then you can use it. Another source that I really like for images is Unsplash. So just unsplash.com. And here again, we could search for letterpress. And here we see a bunch of additional letterpress images on Unsplash. Of course, a lot of what they have is free, but they do also have some paid stuff. So up here under license, you can just switch from looking at all of them to just looking at the free collection. So between the free collection on Adobe Stock and the free collection here on Unsplash, you should have an easy time finding plenty of great stuff you can use for your projects. When it comes to fonts, if you are a Creative Cloud subscriber, you have access to a gazillion fonts here at fonts.adobe.com. So you can search for whatever you're looking for, and then all you have to do is click on a font that you're interested in, and then you can just click Add Family, and it will actually just add it to your system, and you will see it in InDesign. Sometimes it takes a minute, so be patient. And of course, you have to be signed in. Another option is fontsquirrel.com. So these are all free fonts that are available to use for commercial work. So this is a great resource. And one other one that I really like a lot, you just have to be a little more careful to check the licensing, but defont.com is also really great. What I like to do is when you are searching, so let's say you're looking for like a typewriter font, that might be good for a letterpress studio. Once you're kind of in the area of where you are looking for fonts, you can come over here and filter for public domain fonts, 100% free fonts, or free for personal use, since, you're just using this for your own learning. It's not for a real world client just yet. And then when you hit submit, you can see we've got 11 pages of totally free typewriter fonts that you could use. And then you just click over here to download it. So like here, this one, this is kind of a fun, different typeface. So I'm going to click and download that one. And then to install it, it comes in here as this zip drive. So I'm just going to unzip it and open it up, and we see it is a true type font right here. So all I have to do to install it is double click. And I'm on a Mac, so it's going to open up my little font book app, and I would click install. On a PC, the process is pretty similar. You basically just unzip the file and double click it, and it should automatically add it to your system. So that's it. That's your first client, and let me tell you, they are so excited to be working with you. And I just want to make sure you didn't hit retry more than twice, right? Don't do that. All right. So
Before we move on, we should talk about the brief that we're going to be doing in this course. So my brief that we're going to do together is for a bold and spicy plant shop called Hot Sauce Botanicals. They're a bold and spicy indie plant shop known for bright colors, bold decor, and statement-making plants. They're looking for a whole bunch of new things, including an event flyer, a trifold brochure, a fillable PDF form, a promotional magazine, and a social media campaign template that reflects their bold and spicy style. So I know I'm up for the challenge, and I know you are too, because that's why you're here. So we're going to work through this brief together in the course, and I think we're going to have a pretty good time.
With that, I think we're off to a great start. All right, friends, here is a peek at what we're going to be building in this section. But before we do that, we need to get a lay of the land so we know our way around and we feel comfortable in the workspace. So when you first launch it, you're going to be looking at a screen that probably looks like this. Adobe calls this the home screen or home page. We can get to the actual software by clicking the little InDesign icon right up here. This brings us into the workspace. If for some reason you want to get back to that home page, that's what this little house icon is all about. So you can click on that and we're back here. So let's get into the workspace. Now yours might look different. That's okay. The workspace is completely customizable. So I just want to show you a few things to keep in mind and know. And then as you go, you can change the workspace to be however you like it. And that can evolve over time, and that can also vary depending on what you're working on. So when I say workspace, I'm talking about how everything is arranged on your screen. The workspace consists of panels. So that could be the toolbar, it can be this properties panel, I have a pages panel here, a CC libraries panel. However these things are all arranged, that's what we call the workspace. And if we come up under the window menu and we come down to workspace, we'll see there's a list here, and I've got a few extras because I've created and saved some of my own workspaces. But by default, InDesign opens what is called the Essential Workspace. So feel free to move things around, make a big mess, test out different things. And if you panic and get a little lost, you can always come back down here and choose Reset Essentials, and that will reset everything back to the defaults for that workspace. So how do we move things around? The panels themselves can be moved by just dragging the name of the panel. If you click and hold and drag it out, you can pop the panel out of the dock. So this area here is called the dock, or I call it the dock. So panels can be clicked and dragged out of the dock. So you'll notice I have one dock here, one like column of panels, and then there's the skinny little column right here. Because each of these docks can be collapsed to be a skinny little column like this, or it can be expanded like this one. So for example, I can collapse this by clicking on these little double arrows right here, and now it's collapsed. And I could even shrink it down more if I drag this bar here. I could shrink it down so instead of looking at the tab with the name of the panel, instead each panel gets its own icon. So if you're really wanting to free up space on your screen, you can collapse these columns. But then you got to remember which icon is which column. So that comes with practice. But we can also move things around. Like I have two columns here, so I could expand this one, or I could drag this icon into this column, and now I just have one column. So maybe people like that. And you can see that the history panel's down here. So it's like two rows in this column, but I could also take the history panel and drag it up here. And if you notice this blue box around the panels, that means if I let go, now they're all nested together in a single column. Okay, so bottom line is you can move panels and you can make columns and you can collapse them or expand them. You can pop them out so they're free floating like this, or I could take this and drag it in here. Maybe if I put it down below, now I'll have two rows. And then we can just close the whole thing down by clicking those arrows. Okay, so that's a little bit of a look at panels. You should also note that each panel has a menu. So for example, the history panel right here has a menu. That's what these little lines are. Some people call this the burger menu. If you click on that, you see options relating to that panel. So the history panel menu is different than the pages panel menu. So if you ever hear me say, go to the pages panel menu, you go to the pages panel and then you go to the menu. The other thing to know just about panels is that if you're ever looking for one that you can't find, it almost always lives here under the window menu. So this is just a list of panels. And you'll notice that some of them have multiple additional panels. So there's multiple panels related to type and tables, for example. So that's basically what's here under the window menu is panels and different workspace options. So for example, if we go to Workspace and we choose Advanced, now things look a little bit different. So everyone works a little bit differently. Some people change workspaces depending on what they're doing. I personally don't. I just move things where I want them. So let's go back to Essentials. And you see, now we're back right where I left it. You'll notice it's not the default Essentials. It's the one that I just made by dragging my libraries over here. So it remembers that. If you want to get back to the default, you got to come back to Window and then choose Workspace and then reset Essentials. Otherwise, it remembers any customizations you made to the panels while you're in this workspace. If you get your workspace set up just how you like it, you can also go to Workspace and click New Workspace, give it a name. Like in this case, I called mine Khara, real clever. And that way, no matter what mess of things I've made, I can jump back to my saved system anytime that I want. A couple of other things I'm going to point out while we're here. Let's go over to our toolbar here on the left. Some people like to move it to the right, so you could do that if you like that. But I do like mine to be in a single column instead of this 2-column situation. So I'm going to click this double arrow right here, and that will collapse it down into a single column. The other thing that I think is really important, but again, everyone's different, is I like to have my settings and control panel options up here at the top of my screen. And for whatever reason, Adobe doesn't do that by default now. So let's go to the window menu and I'm going to turn on my control panel. So this is where I'm going to be doing a lot of things because that's just how I like it. Most of the things that I'll be doing up here also exist in the properties panel, but the properties panel gives you a lot of these controls, but it's more limited than what you get up here. So personally, I don't use the properties panel very much. So you'll see me working up here, but if you love the properties panel, you can use that too. All right, up here under menu items, we've got all kinds of things. I just want to point out that you'll notice a lot of these commands have these codes right over here. These are the keyboard shortcuts. So as we go, I'll call out a lot of these that we use a lot over and over, and they're just here for reference. So if you find yourself doing something over and over again and you want to be faster at it, you can see, oh, here's how I edit in the story editor is Command or Control on a PC and the letter Y. So these are here if you need them. And also if there's something that you do a lot that doesn't have a keyboard shortcut, you can come down here to keyboard shortcuts and you can actually create your own. So that's just something worth knowing. And finally, let's take care of some settings adjustments, some preferences. So we're going to go up to InDesign Preferences on a Mac. On a PC, it's under the Edit menu. Somewhere down here, it'll say Preferences. Another way to get there is to press Command or Control and the letter K. If you change your preferences a lot, that is so handy. All right, let's go down here to Units and Increments. By default, InDesign works in picas. So for this course, I'm going to be working in inches for both horizontal and vertical settings. But obviously, depending where you are in the world, you may prefer any number of other options. I should point out that when we're making these changes to our preferences, you'll notice we're doing it with no open documents. And that means that the changes we make will apply to everything going forward. If you change your preferences with a document open, then you're generally just changing the preferences for that document. All right, Go ahead and click OK. To make sure we're all working with the same color profiles, let's just go to Edit, Color Settings, and I've got mine set to North America General Purpose 2. You'll see there's lots of different options here. But if you're ever working with a printer who tells you to set things a certain way, this is where you can find some of that. So take a minute, explore the workspace, play with panels, make a mess, and then go ahead and reset everything. Make sure you feel comfortable here, and I'll see you in the next video. Let's talk about color. First thing is, let's open our colors panel. Like all the panels, nearly all the panels, it lives under the window menu. So we're going to choose Window, Color, and we've got several options here, but let's open up Swatches. So here is a look at our default color swatches. Not terribly exciting. You'll notice that there's something here called registration, and it looks like black, but it's called registration. This is something kind of special that's used in a printing process that can really get screwed up if you use this as black. So to kind of just maybe avoid using this when you mean to choose black, let's grab the registration swatch and drag it down and drop it at the bottom so you're less likely to reach for it. So what do we have here? We've got some default colors. You'll notice they're all CMYK colors. We know that because we can see the CMYK values here, and this little icon means that it's a CMYK color. So you'll see here in a minute that InDesign can handle CMYK colors and RGB colors all at once in the same document, and it's not a big deal. The colors can all be handled, converted, sorted, whatever you need when you are exporting. So try not to get caught up in worrying about this too much. Other than those colors, we do have black. We have paper, which is white. Even though we're not talking about white ink, we're talking about the paper, which is generally white. But if you were printing something on purple paper, then anything that you've applied the paper swatch to would just appear the color of the paper. In that case, purple. And of course, we have none. When we're talking about colors in InDesign, they can be applied to objects or containers, or they can be applied to text. So this is where we designate what we're trying to affect. And here's where we can specify either the fill color or the stroke color. So we'll learn more about that later. For right now, let's load the swatches for the course so that they are available here in the swatches panel. One way to do that is to come up to the swatches panel menu, and we'll come down here to load swatches. When that pops open, go ahead and navigate to wherever you saved the course files, and you'll notice that there's something called hsbswatches.ase. You're going to select that and click open. And you'll see that these colors get added here, and these are RGB. And we know that because this icon shows red, green, and blue, although it is hard to see, isn't it? So we've got this tiny little icon versus this little icon, which represents CMYK colors. Why do we have these different kinds of colors? Generally speaking, CMYK colors are meant when we're talking about ink on paper. It's cyan, magenta, yellow, and the K is for key, which is black. So generally we use these colors for print and RGB colors for things that are going to be displayed on a screen. But don't get too stuck on that because there are conversions for all of this, and all color profiles and everything can be converted or assigned when you export your finished pieces. So the bottom line is InDesign can handle it. Don't worry about it. I make documents all the time for print and screen that contain CMYK and RGB colors. So kind of want to say it's not as important as it used to be. When in doubt, you can always chat with your printers. For right now, we're going to happily let all of these colors coexist. I do want to quickly just reorder these. So I'm going to click on this color down here, the pink one, and shift click on the more red one. So these are all selected. And then I'm just going to click and drag up here till I see this line just below the black swatch. And then when I let go, we've reordered them. So these are at the top because those are the ones we're going to be using. We can also put color swatches in groups. So just to clean up our swatches panel, I'm going to select the group of CMYK swatches. So again, just click on the first swatch here and shift click the last one. And with all of them selected, I'm going to click the folder button down here to put them in a color group. And we can double click to rename this defaults. And we can close that folder so we don't have to look at it. Of course, we can always add our own custom swatches at any time, and we'll learn more about that later. And since we know about panels now, let's arrange this maybe a little differently. So we've got this text to image panel here. I'm just going to click and drag that out so I can close it. I don't want that on my workspace right now. Now I've just got my swatches here. You can drag it wherever you want it, but I kind of like it right there. So I'm going to leave it and just collapse it down so it's out of our way. So now we've got our preferences set, we've imported some color swatches, and I'll also point out that because we imported those color swatches without any documents open, those swatches are just going to be like there all the time now. Unless we delete them, they're going to be part of our defaults. So that is a great thing to do if you've got brand colors or just colors you use a lot, is to load them into your swatches panel with no open documents, and that way they'll be there for you all the time. Let's go ahead and set up our new document, shall we? We'll come up to the File menu and choose New Document. You'll see the keyboard shortcut is Command or Control N for future reference. In this new document space, we have some tabs over here, including one called Print. If we click on that, you'll see some presets. So because I'm working in inches here in the United States, my presets include US letter wide and US letter, in this case, tall. We've also got a bunch of templates and cool stuff down here. And of course, you can create your own presets, etc. For the sake of learning, let's come over here and make sure that we are working with inches. And we want our width to be 8.5 inches and our height to be 11. So we can either type those in, or because the dimensions in here are correct and we just want to flip-flop them, we can also click this little orientation button so that our document is tall instead of wide. Down here, we can specify the number of pages we want our document to have. We're going to just stick to 1 in this case, and facing pages means that if we're going to have a document that has a spine, like a book or a magazine, and we want to have a left page and a right page, we can turn on facing pages. In this case, we don't. We're just basically making a flyer, so we can turn that off. If we keep scrolling down, we'll notice some settings for the margins. By default, it's just a 1/2 inch, and that's fine for right now. Down below, you'll notice this area called bleed and slug. If we twirl that open, we can see that we've got a bleed of 0 right now, and that's fine for this document. We will learn more about working with bleeds coming up. At this point, I usually just click create, but I've had people point out to me in the past, why didn't I name it? So we can actually give our document a name right from the get-go if we want. So we can go ahead and call this flyer. That looks nicer than having it say untitled. And then we can come down here and click create. And with that, we are off to a great start. Our flyer is ready for an image. There's a lot of ways to place images. For now, we're going to come up to the File menu and choose Place. In our Course Files folder, we're going to be working in the O2 Flyer folder. So open that up, and you'll see this image here of these leaves, courtesy of a fabulous contributor over at Unsplash. Again, we don't need import options on, and we'll go ahead and click open. So when we are working with images, you can either draw the frame first and then place the image into it,
Or you can go grab the image and then InDesign will give you this loaded cursor that you can then use to draw the frame to hold the image. So just like we did with our mantra poster, we're just going to come up and drag this out to fill the area within the margins. And you'll notice that, again, it is maintaining the proportions of the image, and we want the frame to have different proportions. So to unlock that, we're going to hold the Shift key so we can make it stick right within those margins and let go. So when we place images and graphics in InDesign, they consist of two parts. We have the frame itself. So you can see here that I'm clicking and dragging on this little node, and that is adjusting the frame. So we can drag the frame. In this case, I've made the frame bigger than the picture. So the picture stops here, but the frame keeps going. So we can adjust the frame, but we can also adjust the image within the frame. So we could, for example, let's come up and grab these corners and drag the frame like so. So in this case, you'll notice we adjusted the frame, but the image within it did not adjust. If yours did, come up here in your control panel. Again, the control panel was enabled from the window menu by putting a check here next to control. And up here in the control panel is this option for auto fit, and we can talk about that in a minute. But right now I've got it off, which is why I'm able to adjust the frame and the image doesn't move. It just sits there in the frame and the frame adjusts around it. We can also adjust the image within the frame. One way to do that is to double click on the image. You'll notice I've got the selection tool active up here at the top of the toolbar. And when we double click, you'll notice that instead of the blue frame that we had, we're now looking at this rust-colored frame. So this rust-colored frame represents the actual image itself. So we can see the image is much larger than the frame. If I double click again on the image, now we're looking at the blue frame. And if we double click again, we're back to the rust frame. So with that rust frame selected, I can click and drag, and you'll notice we're moving the image around within the frame. And we can also scale the image within the frame. So if I want to make the image smaller, I can hold down the Shift key and drag inwards from one of these corners, and the image will scale within that frame. Okay, so it's really important to know that frames and the images within them are, in fact, two separate things, and they can each be adjusted separately. And you can toggle between them by double-clicking to control the frame or the image within the frame. Another way to let go of the image here and just get back to the frame is to press the Escape key. If we click away from the frame, so just click in an empty area on the page, you'll see that we deselect the frame. We know it's deselected because it doesn't have those little nodes anymore that allowed us to change the size. And you'll notice with it deselected, if we hover over it, we're seeing this funny like donut in the middle here. This is called the content grabber. And this allows you to just kind of quickly, without having to get in here and select the frame or select the image within the frame, you can just come over here, and if you grab the content grabber, so I'm going to click and hold, it gives you quick access to the image within the frame. And then you can let go and nothing remains selected. It makes it really easy to just swoop in, grab this, and reposition it within the frame. If you start to find this troublesome because it almost makes it a little too easy to grab the contents when you just meant to pick up the whole frame. So if you don't like this content grabber, you could turn that off from the View menu, surprisingly. Under View, Extras, there is an option to hide the content grabber. So I'm actually going to do that because I find that I grab the content far too often by mistake. So I like to have more control over which I'm selecting. So I'm going to hide that. But if you like it, you can leave it on. Or maybe you just don't know if you like it yet. So leave it on if you want to find out. But I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. Another way you can switch between the frame and the content is with the tool. So the selection tool up here will select the frame for you. Unless you double click, then you get the content. But if you have the frame selected and you want to select the content, another thing you can do is just press the A key on your keyboard. That gives you the direct selection tool. And then if you click with that tool just once, you will get the content within the frame. Okay, so lots of different ways to get in here and switch between them. Don't worry about memorizing it all right now. The important thing right now is just to understand that any graphic or image that you put into InDesign is going to have a frame, and then it's going to have the content within the frame. So that's the key takeaway here. The other thing is that there are some buttons that can help us control how these things relate to each other. So earlier I mentioned the auto fit option. And it looks like it's off now by default because I've reset my preferences, but it used to be on by default. So either way, you can toggle it on and off really easily on a case-by-case basis, depending how you like to work. So if we come up to this top right corner, for example, and we pull it up like this, you'll notice the image did not scale with the frame. So if we undo that and we enable auto fit and come back and do this again, now the image is scaling with the frame. So depending what you're doing, you might like that. The only way you'll know is to play with it and see. But for the purposes of this course, I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. There's also these buttons up here, which will tell InDesign how we want the content to fit within the frame. And there are keyboard shortcuts for this stuff. But just so that we see, if we drag this frame bigger than the content, and then we're like, I just want the content to fit in this frame. Most of the time, the option that you'll be looking for is this first one right up here. And all of these are proportionally. It's never going to distort the image, so you don't have to worry about that. So most of the time, this is what you'd probably be wanting. So if we click on that, you'll notice that the image just snaps to fill the frame proportionally. And if we double click, we can see that there is a little bit of an overhang of the image up here and down at the bottom. And that's great because we want this frame to be, let's say, this size, and we want it filled with the image. Then we could decide if we want to come in and maybe drag it down so that all of the overhang is at the bottom, or we want to drag it up so that all the overhang is at the top. So we can make those types of compositional choices. So over time, you'll get used to these, but just know that they are there. And then, of course, we can also just scale the image how we want it. Just make sure that when you are scaling the image, you do want to hold Shift to avoid squishing it like that. So for right now, I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can see better. So zooming in and out is done by holding the Command or Control key on your keyboard and then tapping the minus to go out. You can see the more times you press it, the more you zoom out, and or Command or Control plus to zoom in. So I just kind of wanted to scooch back a little bit so I can see the whole document here. And I'm going to drag the frame so that it's like something like this. And if I want to take both sides of the frame and drag them inward together, you can hold the Alt or Option key. And you see that? Then it'll scale both sides in at the same time. So that's kind of nice. I'm going to go ahead and center this by just dragging it until I see those purple magenta lines coming on the screen. That tells us that this is now centered. Those are our smart guides. If you don't see them, come up to the View menu and choose Grids and Guides,
and then make sure there's a check next to Smart Guides. I think I might bump this up a little bit. So something like this on the bottom and the sides, and that looks great. But we're not done yet. We're gonna get fancy, so buckle up, and I'll see you in the next video. One of the things that makes working with images a little bit different in InDesign than what you might be used to is the fact that these images are not actually being embedded into the document. They are actually being linked to their original location on your hard drive or your networked drive or wherever it is you're pulling the image from. You can embed graphics when it makes sense, but by and large, most of the time you are working with linked images. So what we're looking at here is just a proxy of the file on our hard drive. And all of these things are managed in the links panel. So let's open that up and take a look. So again, panels live under the window menu. So we're going to go to Window and Links. Now mine added itself to this little flyout panel here. So I've got, again, my 2 columns, and one is fully expanded and the other one I've got collapsed down to icons. And I kind of like this one this way, so I'm okay with that. So the icon for the link panel is links. And you'll notice that it came along with a friend. It brought along the layers panel with it. This is the icon for the layers panel. So you can switch between them by clicking on the icons or clicking on their tabs. So they came in here as buddies, and that's fine. In fact, I might drag the swatches up to be there with them because it's kind of nice to have those 3 things together. So to do that, I'm going to click the swatches icon and just drag it till we see that it's joining this little group here. And when I drop it, now they're all 3 in one little nested group. Very cute. All right, but let's focus on the links panel right now. So here in the links panel, we can see the name of the file and what page it's been placed on. And we'll learn more about how to work with links later and how, if the link gets broken, how to fix it. But for right now, just know that because these images by default are not embedded, if you go to share this file with a colleague or a friend or whoever, they're going to get an error when they open the file because they will not have the image. So they should still see the preview, but it's probably going to be really pixelated, and they wouldn't be able to properly output the file. So there are ways to handle that when we go to export things, and we'll talk about it. But for right now, just know every image that you placed is not embedded in the InDesign document. It lives on your hard drive. That also means that if you go what I like to call behind InDesign's back and you move this file or you rename the file, then InDesign's going to get confused because it's keeping track of it from the location where you placed it. So you can see here, if I hover, it's showing me the file path to this file. You can see it's in my Documents folder, in my Bring Your Own Laptop folder. So if I went and dragged this file to my desktop, for example, then I'm going to get a missing link notice here. And we'll see later how you fix that. It's not a big deal, but you just want to know how it works. So we'll take another look at that later. But for right now, that's just the basics of how links work in InDesign. Let's talk really quickly too about resolution. So back here, looking at that links panel one more time, you'll notice if we come down to the bottom and we twirl open this little caret, we can see more information about the links. One of the things we can see here is the color space. So we see this is an RGB image. Again, not a problem, even if you're outputting this to CMYK. But down here, a little lower, we see what says actual PPI and effective PPI. So this is talking about pixels per inch. If you're not seeing this down here, come up to the links panel menu and choose panel options. And then there's a list of all the things that you can tell InDesign to display here in this bottom section of the links panel. So you just want to make sure, like I've got a check here next to actual PPI and effective PPI, and click OK.
So this just means that the image, like as it sits on our hard drive, has 72 pixels per inch. That's normal. Even the most high-res images in the world come out of the camera at 72 pixels per inch. But if you are familiar with how all of that works, there would be a lot of inches, right? So ultimately, there's a lot of pixels in here. And if we scroll down a little further, we see the dimensions. So the total dimensions of this image is fine. We've got a lot of pixels. So this is not a problem. The most important thing to keep an eye on is the effective resolution, right? The effective pixels per inch. And in this case, that's a value of 319, which is great. Generally speaking, for quality prints, you want that resolution to be between 150 and 300. So this does it. That means that at this size on our page, the resolution of this image ends up being 319. So for example, if I scale this down, and here's another good tip to know. If I want to scale the image and the frame on the fly at the same time, I can hold Command or Control and Shift. And then if I click and drag in, you'll notice I can scale them together. And when we do that, when we make it smaller, we're taking all of those pixels and we're cramming them into a smaller space. So if you think about like balls in a ball pit, if you have a giant ball pit, the balls are going to be shallow, right? But if you make the ball pit smaller with the same number of balls or pixels, then the number of balls that you're going to have in a certain given area is going to be higher because they're crammed tighter together in a smaller space. So you can see that the effective resolution just shot through the roof. And now it's over 500 pixels per inch. So this is not something you really have to stress about. These days, digital cameras are so high res, it's almost too much, honestly. And you don't really get bonus points for an image being over 300 pixels per inch. You really don't get any additional benefits from that. So this is really just here like for your information, but honestly, I pretty much never look at it because it's pretty much not ever an issue, at least not in my work. Another thing that you can know that might bring you peace of mind is later when we talk about exporting, I'll show you how to pre-flight your document, meaning that before you send it off to print or send it to the press, whatever, you can establish certain limits that you want it to check for. And one of those things is effective resolution. So you don't have to get hung up on this, but it is nice to know. So I wanted to point it out here, and now you know how it works. And knowledge is power. So yay you. All right, let's get this image properly set the way we want it. So I'm gonna drag the frame. If we want to scale the image within the frame at the same time, the keyboard shortcut again for that is Command on a Mac or Control on a PC and Shift. So I'm holding those keys down, and then I'm gonna scale this to maybe about here. And again, I'm gonna center it. There's that guide to center it horizontally. And now I'm just dragging it up a little bit so that the vertical space at the bottom is similar to the space here on the sides. And again, if you want to make the image fit nicely within the frame, you can come up here and click this little button to fill the frame proportionally. And there's also a keyboard shortcut for that. We'll learn it later. It's kind of a handful, but it is great to know. So here we're going to talk about corners and strokes. So right now we've got this rectangle, right, with 4 corners. But one of the things that's really cool in InDesign is that we can also change the corners, and we can change them all, or we can change them one at a time and individually. And the way we do that is by clicking this little yellow square right here. So I'm just going to click once
And you'll see now we've got 4 little yellow diamonds. So they look like this on each corner. And if we grab any one of those 4 yellow diamonds and we drag in, we get rounded corners, which is pretty cool. But what I actually want to do is just round some of the corners, not all of them. So to do that, we need to add the Shift key. So I'm going to hold down Shift, and then I'm going to drag the same corner. I'm going to drag it in until it won't drag anymore. So it's going to stop when it gets to the center. And then I'm going to continue to hold Shift, and I'm going to drag this guy all the way in like that. So now we have this cool arch. And again, we are making all these changes using the very top tool at the toolbar called the selection tool. The keyboard shortcut for it is V, or you can also just hit the escape key. It's kind of like InDesign's move tool if you're familiar with Photoshop. Next, we are going to add a stroke to this frame. There's a lot of different ways to do that, but let's come up here into my favorite place, which is the control panel. Again, under Window Control, if you're not seeing this. This is one of those things that you can often also do in the Properties panel. So if you have your Properties panel open, you can see it here too. But you'll notice we have 2 options. And right now, they both have this little red line through it. So that indicates that this frame that's selected right now does not have a fill nor a stroke. So this one is the fill, this one is the stroke. So let's say we want to apply a black stroke to this. We can click the little caret right here to pop open another little mini version of our Swatches panel. And then we'll come down here and just select black, making sure we're not choosing registration. So we just want regular black, and we can click away to dismiss that. Now we're not going to see it really well if we click away to just select it and we zoom in with Control or Command +++. We're just not seeing it really well because it's really quite thin. So we can control the weight of the stroke up here in the control panel. We can bump this up to, let's say, 10. You'll also notice that right now, mine has the stroke centered along the edge. So that means that half the stroke is on the inside of the frame and the other half is on the outside. But we can also change the alignment of the stroke. And to do that, let's go to our strokes panel. So I'm going to go to the window menu and open up stroke. And here we see, not only can we also change the weight here, but we can also come down here and align the stroke. So right now it's split down the center. If we click this middle button, you'll notice it will align to the inside. So now all 10 points of that stroke are on the inside, or of course we can align it on the outside. And if we scroll down, we can see that the corners as well, all of it is on the outside. Incidentally, to scroll down in your image, I'm doing it on a trackpad with just my 2 fingers, but if you're working with a mouse and you want to drag, the best way to do that is to hold the space bar, which gives you the hand tool temporarily, and then you can just click and drag like that. So you don't want to be messing with these bars over here because you'll give yourself seasickness. So just hold space bar to get the temporary hand tool, and then you can move up or down or over or wherever you need to drag your document. And then when you let go, you'll just return to whichever tool you had last, which in this case is that selection tool. All right, so let's leave this set to align to the outside. And we can also choose different types of strokes. Now this can be done here in the stroke panel or also up here in the control panel. But down next to type, if you just click the little down arrow, we see all kinds of different options. So in this example, I'm going to go with the thin option by clicking that. And I think that gives us a pretty nice look. So to fit the document on the page, You can press Command or Control minus and scooch back a bunch, or if we hit Command or Control and the number 0, not the letter O for open, that'll open a new document, but Command or Control and the number 0, we can scooch back and see the whole piece on our page at once. So this is the spacing that we're going for on the left and the bottom, and a little bit extra space up here, and we'll see why shortly. That is a look at how to work with strokes in InDesign. We changed the weight, we changed the alignment, and we changed the style of the stroke. Are you feeling fancy yet? I hope so. We'll keep it going in the next video. Ready to add some text? Let's do it. All right, so when we add text, we start by making a text frame. For that, we'll need our type tool. You can press the letter T on your keyboard for the type tool, or you can come over here and grab the T from your toolbar. Then we're going to come down into our image here and just drag a box, something like this. And we're going to type out the words propagation, and then return, and then work, return, shop. All right, so we've got 3 lines of type here. Let's select all the type, and you can come to your properties panel if you want to. I'm going to do it up here, and I'm going to set this to Montserrat and scroll through the long list of options. And I think I'm going to go with Montserrat Black. So you can see in this little preview here that that's a really heavy typeface, and that's what we're going to use for this. I also want this to appear in all caps, and that's not the way that I typed it. So we're going to come up here to the control panel and click this little all caps button. And now we need to scale this up to fill our space. So I'm going to hold Shift and then tap this up arrow a few times. Again, you'll notice if you go too far, you're going to end up with hyphens, etc. So adjust it so propagation fits all the way across. Then I'm going to come in and highlight work and shop. And these ones I want to be bigger. So I'm going to hold Shift again, and then we're going to bump that up until work fills the space at 90 points for me. Yours will vary depending how big you drew your frame. And then shop can be even a little bit bigger. So now that I'm getting close, yep, I went too far. So now that I'm getting close, I'll let go of the Shift key and bump this up 1 point at a time. Whoop. And for me, that ends at 105. And the line spacing needs adjusting, so I'm going to select the bottom line and the middle line, and we'll come up here into the control panel, and our leading is controlled right here. So right now we can see it's set to default. Let's come in here and type something like 90 and then hit enter. In order to bring the middle line of type up without also bringing the bottom, we want to just highlight the middle line of type, and I'm going to reduce that about to 77 or so. I will point out, if you're ever trying to adjust the leading of a line of type, you'll notice it won't change. If you just have your cursor in the line of type, it won't change. You actually have to highlight the entire line of type, and then you can adjust the leading. So maybe I'll go with 78. The other thing that I run into a lot when I'm trying to do this is if I highlight what I think is the whole line of type, but maybe there's a space somewhere that I left off, it also won't work because it works as a whole for that line. So you have to make sure you've got the whole thing selected. Then we want to change the color of this type. We can select it this way and change the color, but I want to show you one other thing. So let's get our cursor out of there by pressing the escape key. So now our text is not active, our text frame is active. And if we want to change the color now, we have to be a little bit more careful how we do it. We can come up to our control panel, and what we want to change is the fill, not the stroke. That would add like an outline to our text. So we want to come up here to the fill, and if we click the little button to pop open our Swatches panel, and we choose paper, this is what is going to happen. We're going to end up with a fill not on the text, but on the container or the frame of the text. And that is happening because right up here, the container is selected instead of the text. So what we want to do then is set the fill for the container back to none. And then we need to click on this little T right here. That will tell InDesign we want to affect the color of the type. And you'll notice that now, instead of just a box here, we now see a T, and it is filled with black because our current text is black. So to make our text white, once we've selected and targeted the text, now we can click paper and the text will change. So just something to keep in mind. That can be avoided if you have your cursor in here and it's highlighted. Then InDesign knows that if you're coming up here, it's going to select the type for you. All right, I'm going to press escape just to get my cursor out of there. So I've got my box active and I can see that it's not centered. So I'm just going to drag this over until we see that magenta line letting us know it is centered with the page. And I want to make sure, that they're both centered with the page. We'll learn more about easy ways to align all of this stuff later in this course, but one way to do that is with those magenta smart guides. And again, if you're not seeing them, you can find them from the view menu by choosing grids and guides and making sure there's a check next to smart guides. It's looking good so far, and it's only going to keep getting better. All right, so this flyer for our propagation workshop for our client, Hot Sauce Botanicals, needs a little more information about the date. Let's tuck up the bottom of this text frame so it's not in our way. So I'm going to click to select it and double click this bottom center node on the frame, and that will just snap it up so it's not in our way. While we're here, you may have noticed this little floating gem of a toolbar. This is our contextual taskbar, and it can be really cool. It's kind of like if the properties panel had a little brother that likes to follow you around everywhere and try to be helpful. And it is helpful sometimes, but it's also really annoying and in the way other times. So if you click this little 3-dot menu, we can also hide it if we want to get rid of it. We could also drag it to a position where it'd be less annoying, and then we could pin it. But in InDesign, I just don't use it that much. Maybe some, like in Photoshop, maybe a little more, but in InDesign, not so much. So I personally am just gonna hide it. But if you prefer, you can drag it somewhere else. You have to kind of grab it over here on the handle. There you go. And then you can drag it out of the way, and then you could come back to the 3 dots and just pin it or unpin it if you want to. And then it'll quit showing up by your cursor. But otherwise, the way it behaves is it just follows you, and it's like right at your cursor all the time. And I just don't care for that. So I'm going to click the 3 dots and I'm going to say to hide it. You can get it back at any time from the window menu by choosing contextual taskbar down here. Next, we're gonna make another type box. So I'm gonna grab the type tool here and click and drag to make another little box. And I'm gonna type SAT period April 7, and then I'll put a little pipe character. Let me zoom in so you can see. And we'll change the color in a minute, but it says Saturday, SAT, abbreviated, period, April 7, half pipe, which is shift and the backslash key. on my keyboard to get this little divider line. And then I'm going to type 2, and I'm not going to type just a little dash. I'm going to actually make what's called an end dash, which is what we use when we're spacing out numbers like this. And the keyboard shortcut for an end dash is the Alt or Option key, and then you press that little dash, the minus on your keyboard. We've got different size dashes. Did you know? All right, so we've got 2, end dash, and then the number 4, and then space, and we'll type PM, and then we'll hit return for another line, and we're gonna type hot sauce, all one word, botanicals, because it's a URL, hotsaucebotanicals.com. Okay, and now just to show you a different way of doing this, we don't have to highlight the text to adjust it. Since we want to affect all of the text in this frame, we can just press the escape key to get our cursor out of there so that our frame is selected. And now to change the color of the text, we can come up to our control panel up here. Again, we're going to be talking about fill color. So that's this swatch right here, and we'll click the caret button. And right now you can see we've got that container selected. To select the type and affect the type color, we need to click the T to target the formatting for the type. And we're going to come down here to this neon color. We can see the RGB values here. It's also worth noting, if you want, we can also rename these color swatches. So let's actually do that. If we right click on this color swatch and we choose swatch options, it's going to pop up this window here. It shows us that it's processed color, that's RGB, and we have this option checked, which says to name it with the color value. So sometimes that's handy, but in this case, let's not. So I'm going to uncheck this, and that allows us to name this. So let's just call it lime. We can see the corresponding hex code value down here as well, and then we'll click OK. Let me pull up the finished file. So here we've got this lime text, and it's on a black background. There's a couple ways to do that. For right now, we're going to take this existing frame, the same frame that has our text in it, and we're going to add a fill to the frame. So let's go back up here to our stroke and fill settings, and we'll open that swatch panel again. And this time, instead of targeting the text, we do want to target the frame, and we're going to set the fill to black. All right, now let's do a little bit more text formatting. So you'll notice that up here, we're not looking at text formatting options. The control panel, like the properties panel, is dynamic. So that means what you see up here changes depending on which tool you have active. So if we want to access our type and text controls up here, we got to switch to our type tool. So the best way to do that is to press the letter T on your keyboard. Now we can do things like center our text within the frame. So we'll click to do that. But again, let's come over here and set this to all caps. Then let's come over and change the font to Montserrat Bold. Over here, this is the leading. Again, that's the spacing between lines of type. And this here, this value is the auto value. That's what is indicated with those parentheses there. So let's change this from auto. Let's set it to 18 points to give the text a little more breathing room. Then let's swoop in and we'll grab this top line of type and set the size to 18 points. And the bottom line of type, let's drop that down to 11. Next, we need to select the frame. So to get our active cursor out of that text frame, we can press the escape key. Now we've got the frame selected, and we're going to do two things. We're going to go back to set the stroke to that same thin stroke on the outside. Since we have our stroke panel added to our workspace now, it's represented with these little lines. We can
pop that open and we'll set the weight to, let's see how it looks at 10 again. And we want our alignment to be outside and we want the type to be thin. And actually, let's make this half. So it's 10 on this one and 5 points for the weight on this one, a little bit thinner. Lastly, we want this text to be vertically centered in this frame. One way we can do that is to come up here to our control panel. And now I'm not looking at type options up here because we've got the frame selected with our selection tool. So now we can do things like align the content of the frame to the top or the middle. And then if we want to position this in the center of the page, we can move this over till we see that magenta guide. And if I want to reduce all this extra space here from the left and the right at the same time, we're going to hold down the Alt on a PC or Option on a Mac and drag this in. And then again, from the top and bottom, we can do it at the same time by again holding Alt or Option. Now, those of you with an eagle eye for details may feel like, hey, this spacing here at the top is more than the spacing here at the bottom. And yeah, that happens sometimes. So when we use this method to just align it to the center, it aligns the text within the frame vertically, but it uses some default settings that probably aren't great. So we're going to make it better. And the way we do that is by bringing up our text frame options. So we can right click and choose text frame options, or the keyboard shortcut is Command B on a Mac or Control B on a PC. And I like to remember that the B is for better because it gives you better control and better options for your frame. And here you can see that the vertical justification has been set to center. That's because we enabled that up here. But it's using the wrong baseline option. So let's come in here to baseline options, and you'll see that it's using the ascent to calculate this. So we want to drop that down and let's see if cap height fixes it. Now it appears like nothing happened because InDesign has this frustrating little habit of not enabling a preview. So you can do all kinds of changes here and you're flying blind because you can't see. So we want to come down here and click on the preview. And there you go. Did you see how it just scooched up a little bit? That's what we're talking about. So we're basically adjusting which baseline we're talking about and basing this all off of. So by default, when you just come up here and say align to the middle, it's not looking at the cap height. So you kind of have to come in here and play with it. So again, we got here by either right clicking and choosing text frame options or using the keyboard shortcut Command or Control B to really give you better options. So in this video, we added this additional text frame here. We set our text within it and made it this green color, which we renamed the swatch to call Lime. And instead of creating a second frame to hold this black fill behind it, we just added the black fill to the same frame as the text because that is clean and simple. It's a nicer way to work most of the time. Then we added a stroke. We aligned it to the outside and we chose this thin option. Let's press Command or Control and the number 0 to scooch out. This is looking really great. We're nearly finished with this project, but there's one more thing to go. All right, we definitely need to add our client's logo to this piece. So let's take a look at how we place vector graphics. It's the same as how we placed this photo image. So we're gonna go back to File. We'll choose Place. And in that same folder, so the O2 Flyer folder, you'll notice something called HSB logo, and this is an Illustrator file. We don't need to show import options right now. We'll just go ahead and click open. You may see this pop-up that's asking if we want to place the Illustrator file or open the Illustrator file as a new editable InDesign document. We just want to place it. And I don't care to see this again, so I'm going to click to not ask. We'll click Place File. And now it gives us a loaded cursor just like we had when we were placing this photo. So I just want it to be up here at the top of our arch. So something about like here, I'm just going to click and drag. And then when I let go, there we are. So this looks good, but of course we should probably have a black fill behind this. So to do that, let's come down here to our rectangle tool. The keyboard shortcut is the letter M, but otherwise it's this second square. We've got two. We've got a rectangle frame tool and a rectangle tool. And I'm just going to click and drag a little frame around this like so. And it's defaulting to whatever colors I have selected up here. That's not what we want. So we're going to set the fill to black and the stroke to none. So that's the one with the little red line through it. Now, the problem is that this frame is sitting on top of the logo. So what we need to do is send this frame back so that it's behind the logo. One way to do that is to right click, and that brings up our context menu here, and we can choose arrange, and we want to send it backward. That moves it one level back. If we send it all the way to the back, it's going to end up behind the arch as well. That means it's the very bottom of everything on our page. So I'm going to right click again, choose arrange, and we're just going to choose send backward. This is something that is definitely worth learning the keyboard shortcut for. Maybe not right this minute, but this is something that we do a lot. So to move it backwards, you hold Command or Control and you tap that left bracket key. That's the one next to the letter P on your keyboard. So you'll notice now it just moves it one level back. So by default, everything you add to your page, it gets added on top of what was there before. So the next thing in the stacking order was the logo. And we can select these two objects. So I'm doing that a couple of ways. You can select one and then shift click the other to select them both. Or if I click away to deselect them, you can also just click and drag across both of them. So you're making a little marquee or you're lassoing those two objects. Just make sure you're not also including this frame down here. So just these two things. And we can center them with each other by designating a key object. So I want the logo to be the key object. So to do that, we just click it once and you'll notice it gets like a stronger highlight around it. So that's the boss object now. That's the key object. And now if we come up here into our control panel, we have these alignment options. And now we can click to align the centers horizontally or the vertical centers this way. So you can see I was pretty close, but by making this the key object, this one won't move, and it's the black frame that will move around to center itself to the logo. I don't like that there's more space on the edges here, so I'm going to click away to deselect everything, click once more to select this frame, and I'll press Command or Control plus so I can zoom in a little bit. And then I'm going to hold down Alt or Option so that I can scale from these edges at the same time. And I like how that looks. All right, now you may notice, just to point out, this is looking jaggedy. That's just the preview. So it's not going to print that way. Sometimes when you're at certain zooms, it just renders that way. If you're freaking out about it, you can right click and choose Display Performance and choose High Quality Display, and that will get rid of the jaggies. All right, I think this looks pretty great. To really see how it's looking, we can hide all of our non-printing stuff by hitting the W key.
I always like to say it's W for wonderful mode because it makes our design look great by hiding all that extra stuff. Of course, to get out of wonderful mode and back to regular mode, just press W again. One thing that can also be helpful is to group this logo with the black box behind it. So again, I'm going to throw a net over the whole thing, and then let's group it. You can go to the Object menu and choose Group, or you'll see the keyboard shortcut is Command-G on a Mac or Control-G on a PC. And now we get this dashed line around it, and that just lets you know that it's grouped. So now that we have these grouped, I think I want to scale it a little bit, and I want to scale the unit as a whole. So you'll notice if we just hold the Shift key and scale in like that, we're not getting the effect that we want. So we want to hold Shift to maintain proportion, but we also want to hold Command, and that will scale them together as a group, but now we have to recenter it again. So I'm going to undo that one more time, and we're going to add a third key to this. So Shift key keeps it proportional, Command or Control scales this whole group and everything in it as a single unit. And then the Alt or Option key scales it from all sides at once. We'll see this again, so don't panic, but just to repeat. So that was the Shift key to keep it proportional, the Command or Control key to scale it as a single unit, and the Alt or Option key to scale from all four sides at once so that it maintains its center position. Whew, that's a biggie. Don't worry about memorizing it right now. We'll be doing it again and again. Then let's just drag this up a little bit and also this up. And maybe this down. So something about like that. And there is our flyer. Of course, saving our work is super important, right? So let's do that. First, we want to save this as an InDesign document. So we're going to choose File, Save As, and if you want to make yourself a folder for your finished projects, I suggest doing so. And then we can leave it with the name Flyer. And for format, we want to make sure we choose InDesign Document. We can leave this option checked. That'll save the preview of the image with it, but again, it's not going to embed those links. We'll learn more about that later. But for right now, as long as you don't move any of your links and stuff, you'll be fine. So we'll go ahead and click Save. Now, because our client isn't going to want to deal with our InDesign document, they're going to want a PDF. Let's do that too. So we'll choose File, Export. For format, we'll choose Adobe PDF Print. Choose Save. And here's where we get a ton of options. For the most part, we can use the presets up here at the top to really help us out. So from this dropdown, high quality print is perfect for when you just want to print something at home or send it to the office print shop, give it to a client. Basically, if you're printing it, but you're not having plates made at a professional offset press place. And we'll look at that later. And we'll click Export. So now we have our InDesign file that we work with here in InDesign, and we have a PDF file that we can send to our client.
But if you want to easily share your work on the class projects page, it can be helpful to actually have a JPEG because depending where you're watching this video, it may or may not let you upload a PDF. So let me show you how to make a JPEG quick. We're just going to go to File, Export. Down here under Format, we're going to choose JPEG. Call it whatever you want. We'll go ahead and hit Save. And here we're going to need to give it some settings. So we only have one page here, so we can just export all. But if you're in a situation later where you want to export individual pages, you can, or you can export all. You can also choose to export single pages, like a left side separate from a right side, or you can export the left and right side together as one single JPEG. This document doesn't have spreads. We'll learn more about that later. So we'll just leave it set to all and pages. And down here, we can choose the resolution. And I think 100 is fine. If you end up exporting it and you need it to have more pixels, then you can come back and use a higher number here. We want to embed our color profile. Anti-aliasing is good. And since this is just for the class website and we don't have any bleeds, we don't have to worry about this. So then we'll hit export and that's it.
That was fun, right? Are you feeling good? Remember, you don't have to have this all memorized yet. We're going to keep repeating, doing things over and over in different ways, and you're going to get more and more comfortable as we continue. Right now, just pat yourself on the back for nailing your first flyer. All right, so now that we have built this flyer together, now it's your turn. So I am here in the project guide, and I'm looking at the class project number 1, which is a flyer. So you're going to use whatever you generated with your random project generator. You're going to use that as your brief, and then you're going to build a flyer for your client. So then down below, I just added a little screen grab from the project we built together because, I don't know, I find it helpful to just trigger my memory about what we did and all the things that you learned. Hopefully you find that helpful. If not, just ignore it. But the idea is that it just reminds you of all the different things and techniques that we learned in that section so you can figure out how you want to incorporate them into your own design. And so the requirements are, it's just a single non-facing page. You want to include at least one image, some text. And again, when you're looking for images to include, I've got links here to Adobe Stock and Unsplash. Your client's going to need a logo, so you can find all kinds of things to help you with that over at Adobe Stock. Also, you'll want to figure out some fonts that you're going to be using for your client per the brief. So here are links to the font sites that I mentioned earlier. And if you need help installing fonts, you can find more details here.
So down here for the deliverables for the client and for, of course, your portfolio, you'll want to export as a PDF using the print preset. As always, you would include any hyperlinks or bleeds if they're applicable, but they're not in this example. We'll get to those later. And then for the course project, to be able to upload and share on the course site, it's not always going to take a PDF. To be safe, it's just easiest to export a JPEG. And then you can upload that. Or, of course, you can also make a screen grab and take a screenshot and post that to the class project and assignment section of the website. And of course, we'd love for you to share on social media and look forward to cheering you on.
Okay, so there you have it, your very first project for your very first client. I can't wait to see what you come up with. Hey friends, I just want to pause here for a moment and check in and see how you're doing. How's it going so far? I know that learning InDesign can feel like a lot sometimes. But you are here, you've shown up, and you've made it this far. So you are already off to a good start. I'd love to know what you've learned at this point that you are most excited about. So let me know in the comments below. And if you want more awesome long-form videos like these, make sure you like and subscribe so you can see more of them. And just so you know, what we've got here is just a small chunk of the overall course. So if you're digging it and feeling the vibes, and you want to learn more awesome InDesign stuff like how to build magazine layouts or create fillable PDFs that don't suck, and how to generate automated tables of content, you should really check out the full course. It's a whopping 10 plus hours of fluff-free InDesign goodness. You'll find the link in the description below. All right, let's get back into it. So here is a look at the brochure that we're going to be creating. But before we design anything, you always want to know how it's going to be used, how it's going to be printed, what the requirements are, what the specifications or specs are. And if possible, you want to use a template from the printer. So we're going to be building this brochure from scratch, but I want to just show you how it works if you are looking to work with a printer template. So many of you might be familiar with moo.com. They are an online print shop, and they, among other things, they print brochures. So if we scroll down here on this page, we see that they do offer design guides. So I'm going to click on that and you'll see it's downloading a zip file. And if we open that up, we see that their templates come in a variety of formats. So they have an Illustrator template, an InDesign template, a PDF template, and a PSD Photoshop template. So let's open up the InDesign document here, and this is what you might see in a template. So we can see they've got 2 pages here. They are non-facing pages. We'll learn more about that later. We can see here this looks like gibberish. So if this is happening to you, this is just a default setting that we can change. So let's go to our view menu and choose display performance. And instead of just typical display, which just makes it garbly just to save computer power, we want to choose a high quality display because we need to be able to read this. All right, so here they're showing us what a bleed area is and what size all of this should be. It shows you where the fold lines will be. That's what these lines here are. They're explaining how to use a bleed, which we'll talk about when we set up our document. Here you can see they're saying it should be a CMYK document, what the resolution of the images should be, and they're even telling us which PDF preset to export to. And they want the artwork for the inside and the outside pages to be uploaded separately. So this is the kind of stuff that varies from printer to printer, so you always want to check. So this page here is the inside page. This is the outside page, with this being the front panel. So you can see they have the guides set up in here. If we look in our layers panel, so if you don't have that on your screen, it's under Window, Layers. So I've got it right here. It's this little icon. We can see that they want us to build our artwork on this layer here, and we'll talk more about layers later. These are all of the guidelines. So we can toggle their guidelines on and off here, and you can see they've locked it, which if we need to, we could unlock it. And then they have this kind of info stuff here. We would want to make sure before you output anything on this template that you hide this kind of stuff so it doesn't end up in your artwork. Now in this document, they've set up the bleeds a little bit differently than what we're going to do. They have essentially baked them into the page size. So even if we're here not in wonderful mode, so again, I'm pressing W to get in and out of wonderful mode, which hides all of the non-printable stuff. But we can see here that this is the edge of the page, and this in their template setup, this includes the bleed. And they're the printer, so they built this how they want to. But in our document, we are going to set up an actual separate bleed, which is pretty standard. But this is nice, particularly if they have a lot of clients who don't know how to work with bleeds, then, it just kind of makes it easier for them. But the thing that I really want to point out about this template and brochures in general is that these 3 different panels are not equal, which is why it's so important when you are designing a brochure that you try to get a template or at least the specs so you know where to put the fold marks and your margins and everything. Just to show you, I'm going to draw a shape to just fit, and we'll just fill this with black real quick. So I'm just showing you that this width is not equal to this one. See, now it's a minuscule difference. See that? It's tiny. The difference is tiny. And this one, look at that. This difference is even greater. So I point this out because I remember one of my first jobs when I was really getting started with this was to make a brochure, and I did not understand this. And
it took me forever and I wasted a lot of paper and ink and just frustration. Okay. So the important takeaways from this are just that before you design, you always want to know what you're building, what the specifications are, who's going to print it, if they have any templates available that can just save everybody a lot of hassle. And no matter what template you're using or who's printing your brochure, those 3 columns here are not going to be equal. They're going to be so close to equal that you're going to think they're equal, but they are not because you have to accommodate the folds. And if you know all that stuff, you will be a step ahead of me when I started. So yay, you. All right, so we are going to be building our brochure from scratch so you get the full experience. And we're going to be setting it up with bleeds. So the first thing we're going to do is come up to the File menu and choose New Document. We'll set our pages to standard US letter, so 8.5 by 11, but we want it landscape. So we can either retype all this or we can just hit this little button here to flip it so it's landscape. We are going to have 2 pages, as we'll have an inside and an outside to the brochure, and we don't want facing pages. We'll work with facing pages later, but basically facing pages are what you get anytime you're working with like a book or a magazine where you have pages that face each other when the documents open, like they're bound in the middle with a spine, and a brochure doesn't have that. So we're going to turn that off. Down here for our margins on a brochure, this is typically going to be smaller. So let's say 0.25 inches. And down here below in this area for bleed and slug, so you may have to expand these to see them down here. We're not going to use a slug. That is a printer specific thing. And for the most part, you'll never have to worry about that. But we do need to talk about bleed. So before we set up our bleeds, let's talk about what it is, because it's one of those things that kind of sounds scary, but it's really pretty simple. So unlike when you print something at your home or your office, when you send a document to a professional printer for press printing, after it's printed, it gets trimmed down to its actual final size. Now, of course, if you have ever tried to trim something perfectly along the edge, you know that it's tricky to be exact with it. And even with fancy, powerful, and wildly precise machines, it's not exact. And so what happens is you end up with these little white wedges along the edges of your document. And that is definitely not cool. So to get around this, we build bleeds into our documents, and then we extend our artwork past the edge of the page all the way to that bleed. And this is what creates enough wiggle room when trimming to get nice clean edges and avoid those dreaded white wedges. So bleeds can vary depending on the printer, so you always want to check, but the standard that most go with in inches is 0.125 inches. So that's 1/8 of an inch. And I believe for the rest of the world, I think the standard bleed size is 4 millimeters, but again, always check with your printer. So we're going to use this 0.125 inches and we should be good to go. We'll go ahead and click create. So here is our document and you can see this magenta line here. This is our 1/4 inch margins all the way around. The edge of the white page here is the edge of the document itself. And then this red line here, this is the bleed. So this is where we want to extend all of our artwork to so that when the document is trimmed along the edges here, we're not going to end up with those white wedges. So simple, right? Now you are ready to rock a bleed. So now that we have our document set up, we are going to set up our guides. And I based them on the template from Moo, just so we have something, but where you put your guides varies depending on who's making your stuff and the paper you're using and all that. So let's create a layer for our guides, just like they did in that Moo template. So again, we want to have our layers panel open. You can always find your panels under the window menu. Here's layers, or the icon looks like this. And this layer 1 is going to be where we put stuff. So
To make a new layer for our guides, we'll just make the little plus right here. And this is not necessary, but the advantage is that we can then just lock it or unlock it easily and not worry about accidentally moving guides later. So as we'll see later, there's lots of different ways to create guides. For this project, we are going to create them by just dragging them out from the rulers. So here on page 1, let's first create our fold guides. So those are going to be vertical guides, which means we drag them out from this vertical ruler over here on the left. If you don't see your rulers, you can find them under the view menu here by choosing show rulers. If you've got them on, it says hide rulers, and you'll notice the keyboard shortcut is Command or Control R. So we're going to come over here and just click and drag. And we want this ruler to be precisely, and in inches, this is really fun. We want this at 3.62, so we can try and nail that. We can look here, you see a little flyout that's telling us where it should go, but we can also, once we drop it, we can also come up here and type 3.62 and hit enter. So there's one at 3.62. And the other one we can drag out, and I'm just going to drop it loosely, and I'll come up here and we're going to type 7.295. Obviously, if you're working in millimeters, this is so much easier. All right, so those are going to be our page folds. Now we want to make the margins here. So like we have the margin here on the outside of the whole page. We need to have another margin for that buffer between the content on this panel and the fold. So let's go grab another guide and we'll drop this one at 3.38 inches. And we need one on this side too. So that's going to be at 3.86. And we'll put two more over here. So drop one and come up here. This is going to be, oh, I nailed it, 7.06. I wasn't even trying. Look at that. And this one, I'm just eyeballing here. Let's see. And we'll drop this one at 7.545. All right. So these are our fold lines and inner margins for the panels on page 1. Now we're going to go down to page 2 where we basically have to reverse that. So our folds on page 2 will drag out to 3.7 and 7.39. Those are our folds, and now we need the 1/4 inch margins on either side. So this one should be 3.44. You can see why a template's nice, right? So you don't have to do all this. 3.95. Two more. 7.14. And ooh, I nailed another one. 7.63. Awesome. So let's rename this layer. Instead of layer 2, let's call it guides. So to rename it, you want to click and then click again. If you click twice in a row too fast, you cancel it. So I've had this described to me as like a southern click. So you click once and then you just kind of take a breather and click again. And then we're going to call this guides and press enter. And then if we lock it by clicking in this little empty space right here, that will prevent us from accidentally grabbing and moving any of these guides while we're working. So there we go. We just set up our very own brochure template. All right, so we're going to ease into this by starting with just placing some graphics like we have been doing so far. Now, we want to make sure that before we do that, that our active layer in our layers panel is not the guides layer because that's locked. And if we try to place something on here, it's not going to work. So we can make layer 1 active by just clicking to select it in our layers panel. Now, previously we've been choosing File, Place, but you'll notice the keyboard shortcut is Command D on a Mac or Control D on a PC. So I'm going to click out of there and let's just practice using our keyboard by pressing Command or Control D for dropping in an image. In the course files, you're going to want to navigate to the file folder called O3 Brochure. And we're going to actually select 2 images to place at a time here. This photo by Doug Kelly from Unsplash, and then we're going to hold down Command or Control to select a second image. And here we're going to put in our client's logo. Again, we don't need our import options on, so let's leave that off and we'll click Open. Now you're going to see our cursor comes loaded with both of those images actually, and you can see right near the tip of my mouse, there's a little number 2 in parentheses. So that lets us know that we've got 2 images loaded on our cursor, and we can cycle between them by using the arrow keys. So if we forgot what we just selected, there you go, there's our reminder. So the first image that we're going to place is this one here. So you want to tap your left or right arrow keys until you see this. And we are going to place this on these 2 panels here. So we're going to be designing our outer page of the brochure, the outer side first in its entirety, and then we'll move on to page 2. So we're on layer 1, we've got our loaded cursor, and because we want this image to go all the way to the edge, we want to make sure that we're not just placing it here at the edge of our page, but we want to stretch all the way up to that bleed mark. So I'm putting the corner on the fold line and the bleed, and then I'm just going to click and hold my mouse, drag all the way down, and you'll notice again, the proportions are locked to the image, but we want to make the frame have different proportions. So let's hold Shift and we want to make it come all the way down to the bleed lines on the bottom of the page and all the way on the right. And then when we've got it in place, we can let go and it's going to drop in that image. We'll talk about getting that to fit in a moment. And let's take the logo right here and we can place it from about this margin right here on the front to the margin on this side. All right, so let's click to select this image here, and we can see that it is fitting within the frame proportionally, but it's not filling it. So if you recall from earlier, we had gone up here and clicked this button to fill the frame proportionally. We don't want to be doing that every time we place an image. So there's a couple of things that we can do to change that. One is get to know the keyboard shortcut. So it's basically everything plus the letter C for convenient, I like to say. So by everything, I mean all those modifier keys. So hold down Shift, hold down Alt or Option, and hold down Command or Control, and then press the letter C because, like I said, it's so convenient. Now, if we want to make all of our images automatically fill the frame, another thing we can do is click away from there so nothing is selected. And let's come up to the Object menu and choose Fitting, Frame Fitting Options. Here, if we want to enable autofit for everything, we can turn that on. That will resize the content as the frame resizes. That's kind of a personal preference thing, so you can play with that, see if you like it. Another thing we can do is come down here to Fitting, and we can just always tell it to fill the frame proportionally. And then click OK. So because we did that without any particular object being selected, it's going to be the default setting for everything in this document. But going forward, if we want that to be the default for every document that we work on in InDesign, not just this one, then let's take a minute and save this document. So let's go to File, Save As, and put it in your finished work folder, wherever you are storing that. And we'll just call it Brochure. Format should be InDesign document, and click Save. And now we can press Command or Control W to close it. And then if we go back to our workspace and we go back to Object, Fitting, Frame Fitting Options, and if we set the fitting here to fill frame proportionally and click OK, now every image we drop in anywhere is going to automatically fill the frame proportionally. A few other things that can be really helpful to set while we're here and we don't have any documents open is our display preferences, so we don't keep seeing those jaggedy edges on our graphics. So let's go to View, Display Performance, and set it to High Quality Display. And it can be really helpful to set our default font of choice. And if we do it again with no documents open, it'll apply to everything going forward. So let's select our type tool by pressing T, and up here, whatever your font is, let's change it to Montserrat. And I'm going to choose bold. 12 points. Then we can switch back to our selection tool. Now that that's done, let's go back and open our document, File, Open Recent, and it should remember it here. So we'll pull that up, and here we are. So next, to make this logo more visible, let's add a color fill behind it. So for the rectangle tool, we can just press M for marquee, and let's just come over here, draw a marquee that's going to go from this fold all the way to that bleed. All right, so now we want to fill this with the brand green color. So I'm going to come up here to my control panel. This represents the fill, so we'll click this drop down. And here is that nice bright green that we want. And we can see that this frame currently has a black stroke applied to it, and we don't want that. So we could click out and click back in here to change the stroke, or we can just click right here to pull the stroke up so that it's active, and then set it to none. And we'll click that little caret to close that panel. And finally, again, we need to move this shape back one so that the logo is in front of it. So again, we could right click and we could choose Arrange, Send Backward, or let's practice this keyboard shortcut, Command or Control, left bracket. And we want to make sure that the green frame is centered behind the logo. So let's select both objects. Since this one's already selected, we can just shift click to add the logo to it. And then let's actually set the logo as our key object. So I'm going to click on it one more time. That puts that thick highlight around it and tells InDesign that we want to center these things around the key object. So now we can come up here in our control panel. These are our alignment options. And we want this one here so that they have aligned vertical centers. Now we wouldn't want to align it horizontally because this margin is going to be a little bit bigger because of that bleed, but it's also going to be trimmed off. So visually, when we're looking at it, it looks off center because there's more space on this side, but you got to remember it's going to be trimmed here along the edge of the page. So we know that it's centered because the logo is fitting between the margins for the panel. All right, so on this page here, this right-hand panel, this is going to be the front of the brochure. This middle panel is going to be the back of the brochure. So here we want to add some text. So let's press T for the text tool. We can draw a little box down here. And the font that we're going to be using is Allotropic. So hopefully you've already gone ahead and activated that. So it's Allo, A-L-L-O, Tropic. We're going to choose bold. And we want this to be all caps, so we can go ahead and set that now. And I know that we want it to be 18 points. You don't always know this ahead of time. So usually you just get the type out and then style it. But, I planned ahead. So let's take advantage of that. 18 points, allotropic, bold. We can come up here and set the color to this brand green. And we'll go ahead and center it within the text frame. And make sure our cursor is active in here. And we're going to type grow something spicy. And then to get our cursor out of this box, let's press escape. And that brings our controls back to the box here. So we can actually set this to be the width of the column here. And that way we know that it's centered, and we can bring it down so that the text is sitting on that 1/4 inch margin along the bottom. And I'm looking at this and thinking, I don't love that the text is so close to the stem of this flower. So I just want to scooch the flower over within the frame. So as you will hopefully recall, if we double click on it with our selection tool, that will allow us to select the image itself within the frame. And now I'm just going to click and drag it slightly to the right to just give it a little more breathing room there. And another trick is that when you hold shift while you're dragging like up and down or left and right, it will keep it in alignment so that you don't accidentally drag it up like that. So holding shift and dragging it straight to the right will keep it flush and just keep it moving straight over. So nice little bonus tip. And if we want to see how it's looking, we can press W to pull up wonderful mode, and that looks great. 2 out of 3 panels on the outer page are already done. All right, before we add our text here, let's make sure we're not still in wonderful mode. So press W to get in or out. And so we should be able to see all of our margins and our bleeds and the guides and everything. All right, so we're going to be placing text in here. And rather than having you have to type it all out, we're going to work the way you often end up working as a designer, which is you're building the layout and somebody else, like in the marketing department, copywriters, somebody else is crafting the text. And then it's our job to make it look good. And that might be delivered to you in any number of ways. The way I've got it for us here is in a text file. So using Finder if you're on a Mac, or Windows Explorer if you are on a PC, or my personal favorite is to work in Bridge, navigate to the course files and you will find somewhere in there a text file called team.txt. So if you open that up, it's just a nothing fancy text file. So we're going to select all of that and copy it. And then come back over to InDesign, where you can press T to bring up your type tool and then just drag out a little text box and paste in your text. So now we get to begin the fun part of styling and formatting the text. And the best way to do this is to take advantage of styles. Styles are like little recipes that save us from having to format similar text over and over again. And it makes it easy. So if we need to change something like, say, a font or a size or a color, we change it in one place and it updates everywhere. So as a designer and an InDesign user, you definitely want to make use of styles. The main 2 that we'll be working with are paragraph styles and character styles. And we'll learn more about what the differences are as we go, but the main one is paragraph styles. So let's start with what's going to be our header up here. So that's going to be here where it says our team. So let's go ahead and style this the way we want all of our headers in this document to look. So we highlight this text. We're going to come up here and change the font to Allotropic. That's our brand font. So specifically Allotropic Bold. We'll leave the color as black. We're going to set the size to 24 points. We want it in all caps. And we're going to build in something called paragraph shading that's going to go behind this text, similar to how we have a green box behind this logo. But we don't want to be drawing green boxes every time we want to put a headline in here. And because this type might be in a frame along with other text, we can't just fill the frame. So we're going to use something called paragraph shading. So that is an attribute under paragraph formatting. So if we look up here in our control panel, we'll notice on the left here that there's a little A. This is for character formatting. If we click the little paragraph symbol, which, by the way, if you're ever on Jeopardy, this is called a pilcrow. We're going to click the pilcrow, and you'll notice that there's an option here for something called shading. And if we click right here and just turn it on, it's going to show up with like these default settings that are not really helpful. So what we want to do is Alt or Option click right on this little box here, and that will bring up our shading settings. So we'll move this out of the way so we can see what's happening. And remember that InDesign just doesn't think you need a preview by default. So we want to click to enable the preview so we can see what we're doing here. So our shading is enabled and we've pulled up our options by Alt or Option clicking on this little icon. And now we can choose the color we want for our shading. And if we click this drop down, here's all of the colors in our swatches panel. So here's our brand green. So we're going to select that. And it's defaulting to a tint, but this brand is bold. So we're not going to be using a tint. We want this at 100%. Down here, if we wanted to change the corners of our little shading, we could, but we're going to leave it. Let's come down here to this offset option. Right now with an offset of 0, you can see that the shading is happening just like exactly on the text. And that's not very comfortable to our eyes. So we want to give it a little bit of a buffer. So we've got the chain here enabled, which means if we make adjustments, you can see that it's going to expand on all 4 sides. So let's go ahead and bump that offset on all 4 sides up to 0.125 inches, which is 1/8 of an inch, which coincidentally is the same as our bleed. That way the text that's being shaded has some breathing room around it. Over here, we can control sort of the boundaries for the shading. So we'll go ahead and leave the top edge set to ascent, the bottom edge set to descent, and for the width, instead of having it be the whole column, let's set that to just be as wide as the text, plus the offset that we set over here. Now we'll go ahead and click OK, and let's switch back to our selection tool so we can adjust the width of our frame here. So it's going to go from the margin here to the other margin. So remember, this line here is the fold and this line here is our margin. So that's looking pretty good, but we also want this shading to really just line up with the 1/4 inch margin here. So let's go back to our type tool and put our cursor in this text somewhere. And let's go back to our character formatting. And it's important to point out that just because this is called character formatting and this is called our paragraph formatting, there are some overlaps. Like there are things that appear here that also appear here and vice versa. So for most of the time, we'll probably be working in the character formatting controls, even though we are actually controlling some paragraph settings. But we want to be up here in character formatting controls. And over here on the far right, we have the ability to set the indent, the left indent in this case, for this header. And because we made the shading 1/8 of an inch all the way around, if we want that shading to line up with this margin here, we need to set a left indent to match that. So up here, this little icon represents the left indent. So I'm just gonna tap this twice, the up arrow twice, and you'll notice it moved that text over. And so now the shading lines up where we want it with this margin. We also need to bump the text below it down a little bit. So another thing we can do also up here is if we move over to the right, we see some spacing options. So this tells InDesign how much space to put before a particular style of type. And here we can control the space after. So every time we have a headline like this, an H1, we're going to call it, our top level header. Every time we have this header, we want a 1/4 inch of space to come after it. So let's boost this up until it says 0.25 inches, and we can see that the text below has scooted down now. So this right here is how we want all of our headers, our top level headers, or H1s as they're called. This is how we want them to look. So rather than having to set all of these settings every time that we want a header, we're gonna take all the settings that we already put here and we're gonna slurp them up and save them in a little preset, like a recipe for headers. And the way we do that is with paragraph styles. So let's go to our window panel and we're gonna come down here to styles, and you'll notice there's lots of styles. We're not gonna get into all of them, but let's just focus on the two biggies, which are paragraph styles, and we'll see character styles later. So let's open our paragraph styles panel. And this is a biggie that we want to keep handy. So I like to drag it into this little column right here, along with its buddy, character styles, because they work together. And then this stuff I'm going to drag out and close. All right. So paragraph style, you can see the icon is that little pilcrow symbol, right? The paragraph symbol. All right, so it's important that we have our cursor active in this text. We don't have to highlight all of it. We can just have it flashing anywhere within this text because InDesign recognizes this as its own paragraph since there's a return here before the other text. So this is a paragraph. And to slurp all of these settings up into a preset, the best way to work is to hold Alt or Option and then click the Create New Style button. And what that does is it creates the new style and it opens the style settings so that we can double check a few things here, okay? So if you just click this by itself, it's just gonna make a style. Then you have to double click it to open this up. So it's always good to Alt or Option click right here. Now we can give this a name. So typically, you'll find that people name their styles with, you can use anything, but since we're going to call this like a level 1 header, we'll call this style H1. And styles are great because you can base them on each other. We'll learn more about that later. Right now, the only other thing we want to do here besides give it this name is that we want to make sure that the style that we're creating gets applied here. So yes, this already matches visually the style that we're creating, but we have to tag this with the style so that if we edit the style later, it will include this bit right here. So we'll go ahead and choose Apply Style to Selection. So you'll notice if we come through here and check out like our basic character formats, here you're seeing it's sucking up all the settings, allotropic bold, 24 points, all caps. If we come down to the other categories like paragraph shading, it slurped up those existing settings too. So we've got that green color at 100% with the 1/8 of an inch offset and the width set to the text itself rather than the column. So this is a great way to create styles because it's just easy, right? Like you just visually build whatever you want here and then you slurp those settings into a new style, and we go back to general. We want to make sure we always apply that style to the selection. So now we can click OK. And now we see in our paragraph styles, we have our basic paragraph style, which is just there by default all the time. And now we have our H1 style. So just to show you what this looks like, if I put my cursor here where it says Thai Calathea, you'll notice that the paragraph style is now showing that this text is basic paragraph. But if we want to apply that header style to it, we just click right here and boom, it gets applied. Okay, now we don't actually want this applied here, so let's press Command or Control Z to undo that. But you'll see when we get to page 2 down here, we are going to make use of this header in several more places, and now we won't have to be reformatting it every single time. All right, so that is our first paragraph style that we've created. So yay, round of applause for yourself. Take a minute, let that soak in. Don't panic if you're not quite sure, because we've got plenty more on styles yet to come. So now that we've created an H1 style, we're going to create a couple more styles, an H2 and a body copy style. So what we have here is a little blurb about the team at Hot Sauce Botanicals. We see that we have a name, and then we have like a little blurb for each name. So we've got Erica Jade, Liz Flowers, Lynn Stem, and Thai Calathea. So if this is our top level heading, H1, we're going to create a secondary level heading called H2 for the names, and then we'll add some body here. So the easiest way to create a style is to go ahead and make the text look the way we want, and then slurp those settings into a new paragraph style. So I'm going to highlight our first name here, Erica Jade. And for our H2 heads, we're going to be using Montserrat. So if yours isn't already set to Montserrat, go ahead and set it. Specifically, Montserrat Bold. We'll use 12 points. And we also want all caps. So we'll click right here to enable that. That's pretty simple. That's all we want for our H2. So with that selected, or at least with our cursor in that paragraph, we're going to come back to our paragraph styles panel. We're going to hold Alt or Option and click the Create New Style button. Again, the Alt or Option creates the style and pops it open here so we can give it a name. So we'll type H2. It's our second level heading. And we want to make sure that it is applied to the text right here. Then we can go ahead and click OK. And you see here is our H2, and because it was applied and our cursor is active here, it shows that this text has the H2 style applied to it. So check it out. If we put our cursor here in the Liz Flowers text, you'll notice right now that is just a basic paragraph. But we also want Liz Flowers to be H2. So we can just click. There it is. We also want Lynn Stem, H2. Thai Calathea, H2. See how that works? Pretty sweet, right? All right, and finally, for this text, we're going to create that body style. So for the text here under Erica's name, this little blurb, we're going to highlight that because, again, we're going to make the text look the way we want and then slurp those settings into a style. So we'll also use Montserrat, but this time we're going to choose light. And we're not going to put it in all caps. And we're going to drop the size down to 11 points. And to create a little more room after the paragraph, before we get to our next heading, let's come back up here in our control panel. We want to set the space after our body paragraph to 1/4 inch again. And we also have this cool setting right here. This allows us to control how much spacing is between paragraphs that all have the same style applied. In the text we have right here, right now, it's not gonna make any difference whatsoever. So for now, we can either ignore it or let's put in a value of 0.125. So we can just type that, 0.125. So that's not going to change anything here, but in some of our other text, we'll see where we have multiple paragraphs that are all the same style, and we don't want this much space after each paragraph. So that's what this setting is for. All right, so now we've got this set up looking good. So as long as our cursor is somewhere in this paragraph, we're going to come back to our paragraph style panel and we're going to hold Alt or Option, click that new button, and we're going to call this Body. We're not going to base it on anything. We're not messing with any of this yet. You can see it slurped up all of the settings, and we want to make sure that there's a check next to Apply Style to Selection, and we'll click OK. Now, all we have to do to style out the rest of this text is click to put our cursor in this paragraph, and then come over here and click to apply the body style. Put our cursor in this paragraph, click to apply the body style, and finally put our cursor in this paragraph and click to apply the body style. And we can see that for some reason, it is showing up bold. So I don't know why that is happening here just now, but it may not happen to you. But if it does, let's talk about it. We'll look at this more later, but you'll notice if I put my cursor back in our proper body style, you'll see it just says body. But this text, if we put our cursor here, we get body and we see this pesky little plus. So that means something about this text has an override applied to it. So something's different about it. I don't know where that came from, but it's easy to fix. And we'll look more at this later. But to clear this override, we're going to right click just someplace here next to this body style, right click, and we're going to choose Apply Body Style and clear any of those pesky overrides. And when we do that, we get what we are expecting. Aren't styles cool? I think they're really easy to work with. It just takes some practice and you have to get into the habit of using them. And it might seem like it takes a little more time to set them up, but really all it takes is styling the text, Alt or Option clicking here, and giving it a name. And once you do that, you save yourself a boatload of work and time later. We've got a lot more fun things to learn about styles as we go, so this is just the beginning. To make sure we don't lose all the awesome work we've done so far, let's update our saved document. You can choose File, Save to update what we've done already, or we can also just press Command or Control S. Nice job so far. More good stuff ahead. So far, all of the text we've been working with in this particular story, as InDesign calls it, is in a single frame. But one of the cool features of InDesign is that text can be threaded between multiple frames. And we'll look more about this later, but just to give you a little taste of it, let's take this text frame and drag this bottom node using our selection tool. The keyboard shortcut is V for very important. And we're going to drag this up until we only have the H1 text in here. So you'll notice that all of the other text disappeared. Of course, it's not gone. If we drag this down, it comes back, but it doesn't fit in this text frame. And we can see that there's more text in this frame than fits in its current size because of this little red plus. So we call this text overset text because the text in this frame is over the amount that can actually be displayed. So this lets us know there's overset text. So rather than expanding this and then like cutting and pasting this text, instead, what we do is we click the little overset text button, the little red button,
And that gives us a cursor that is loaded with the rest of the text. And now we can come down here and let's say actually we want this text frame to start about here. So I'm looking at like the left edge of this M right here. And now I'm just gonna click and drag out another type frame. And when we let go, all of the text that was overset in this frame flows right into this one. But it's not the same as if we just copied and pasted. These are actually connected. So InDesign calls this a story. So this is a story, albeit a pretty short one, that is split from this text frame to this one. And we know that these are now threaded a couple of different ways. One, we can see this little blue triangle here. We call this the import, or maybe just I call it the import. I think it's actually called the import. But this little blue triangle shows us that the text in this frame is coming from somewhere else. And if we click up in this frame, we see we don't have that little icon over here, but we do have it on this bottom right side. So this shows us that the text in this frame is flowing from this outport into this import. Now, if we want to actually see, like if we dragged our frames around and got them all jumbled, we might be confused about what order they actually go in. So we can always check that. If we come up to the View menu and we choose Extras and we choose Show Text Threads, when we click on any one of these two frames that are now, as we would call, threaded, we will actually see a little like string connecting them. So if we move this around, the string moves. And this is just a visual way to see that this is all one story and the text starts here, flows from this output to this import and onward. And so if we had a series of more frames, like if we shorten this up a little bit more and we click the little output again and we drag another box over here, now our story is split across 3 frames. And what that means is if we grab our type tool and let's say that we add some more text to Erica's little blurb right here. So I'm just going to type some gibberish, but you'll notice that as I am doing that, it's pushing the text down, but it's not becoming overset. It's just flowing into the next text box. So we can actually highlight text from one frame to another because they're connected. They're all part of the same story. That also means if I go back to the selection tool here and I select this third frame that we don't actually want and I just delete it, the text doesn't disappear. It just flows back up into this frame where now it's overset again. So we could either click the overset button and port it into a new frame, or we could just grab the little corner down here and expand that frame. So these little indicators are always here. If you want to unlink these, for example, this one, we would click the import on this frame. So that's right here. If we click that and then we click back on itself. So click again. And now we're saying, hey, this text frame should have text coming in from just itself, which is empty. So you'll notice that put all the text back up here. And we'll learn more about how to work with this stuff later. So we can undo that for now. And if I have this loaded cursor somehow, we can just press Escape to delete that. So what we want for now is this text frame up here with our H1, and then we're going to have all this other text in this frame down here. And to keep things tidy so we don't end up with these threads all over our screen, now that we know how the threads work and that we can turn this on anytime we want, we can also turn it off. So I'm going to go back up to the View menu and choose Extras, Hide Text Threads. So I'm going to undo all of this and get rid of my gibberish. And we're going to be learning more about working with threaded text frames later in this course. For right now, just know threaded text frames are a thing. And now we have two of them. So we've got one simple little story split across two threaded text frames. Next up, we're going to learn about anchored objects. To get started, we're going to create a series of frames to hold the profile pictures for each of our team members. Now, up until now, we've been selecting the images first and then bringing them in and drawing the frames. But this time, just to spice it up, we're going to do it differently and draw the frames first. We've also explored looking at the rectangle tool for drawing frames. This time, we're going to use the frame tool, the rectangle frame tool. For our purposes, for this course, for here and now, you can really use these interchangeably. What's nice about using the frame tool is that you're sort of telling InDesign that you plan to put an image in it, although we can put an image in these frames too. But the other thing that's nice is when we draw with these frames, we get this little X in there and just kind of makes it easier to see and is like a little mental reminder that we intend to put a graphic there. So let's grab the frame tool. If we click and hold, you can see that the keyboard shortcut is F. And we're going to come over here and draw a little frame. So I'm clicking and dragging, and because we want it to be square, let's hold the Shift key while we are drawing it. Something about this size should be good. When we're happy with the size, looks like mine's just over an inch, and I know that because I can look in the top left-ish area of my control panel and it's showing me the size, and I even have this little flyout down here. So you can keep an eye on things as you go, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to set this to be about this big, and when we let go, we see the frame and the little X through it basically just means we drew it with this tool and that we plan to put an image in it. Now, rather than having to draw out 3 more frames, let's just make copies of this one. We're going to do it on the fly, which means we need to grab our very important selection tool. The keyboard shortcut is V for very important. And to make a copy of this on the fly, we're going to hold down Alt or Option and then drag out a copy and let go. And we need 2 more, so we could just drag across these 2 to throw a net over both of those, hold down Alt or Option again, and drag down. Alt or Option tells InDesign to make a copy. And you'll notice it can be tricky to drag it straight down. It gets a little wobbly. So to force it to be straight, you can add the Shift key. And we can even see these little green guides turning on right here and letting us see when the spacing is equal. Let's go ahead and get our images now. So we can press Command or Control D to drop in some images. And this time in our O3 brochure folder, we're going to grab this one by Gaining Visuals, courtesy of Unsplash. This one by Jennifer Marquez of also Unsplash. Here we have Yoren Aranas. Not sure I'm getting the names right, but I'm trying. And we've got this one from Oswald El Saboa. We don't need any import options, so we'll uncheck that and we'll just click Open. Now this is going to give us a loaded cursor, and you'll notice that there's a little number in there with the 4. So we've got 4 images loaded on our cursor, and just like we saw earlier, we can cycle through them with our arrow keys on our keyboard. So this is going to be Erica. So we're just going to click to plop that right in the frame. This is going to be Liz. This is going to be Lynn. And this is going to be Ty. And before we get too precious about composing them within the frames, let's actually imagine that we decided we wanted these to be circles instead. How would we do that? Do we have to start over? No. Throw a net over everything to select all 4 of these, and we're going to come up to the Object menu and choose Convert Shape, and we're going to choose Ellipse. Nice, right? And now we can click away to deselect them. Now, ultimately, we want each of these profile pictures to be sort of connected to the person whose name they go with. And while we could just drag these around until they kind of line up, something, I guess, like this. The problem then is, let's say we change this
text frame? Well, now it's narrower. So now like Liz needs to be down here, and then we need to move Lynn, and then we'd need to move Ty. And this starts becoming a real pain in the behind. So I'm going to undo that. And a solution for that is to anchor these objects. That's different than grouping because one, all of this text is in a single frame. So we can't just group this image to this whole text frame because what about all the other images? So that's where anchored objects come in, because anchoring things allows graphics like this to actually move and respond to the text. So just like an anchor holds a boat in place, here we're going to anchor this graphic so that it's always in the right position next to this text, no matter where this text ends up flowing. So how do we do that? We're going to come up here to this little blue dot, and look at that. Even if we hover, InDesign's helping us out. It says drag into text to anchor the object. We can shift drag to make an inline object, or we can option or alt drag to open the dialog with more options. So for right now, let's just take this little blue dot. We're just going to drag it until you see the cursor is right here to the left of the E in Erica. And then when we let go, boom, it's anchored. Now, how do we know it's anchored? Look at that. We got a little anchor right here. Cool, right? Now, we don't have any options. We didn't get to set any particulars about our anchoring. And when you anchor objects like this, you definitely want to be specific about it. So we can right click on this object and choose anchored object options. Or by the way, you can also unanchor it by choosing release. So here's what the options look like. But if we Command or Control Z to undo that whole thing, this is what InDesign was trying to tell us with this little flyout. If we hold down Alt or Option while we drag the little blue dot in here, and when we let go, not only does it get anchored, but it also opens up our options. There's several different types of anchored objects. If we click this drop down, we'll see that there's inline anchored objects, there's above line anchored objects. In this case, we are custom making this because we want this anchored image to just float around out here. So we're going to set this to custom. And down here under reference point, InDesign always defaults to some goofy setting. But it kind of works best for my brain, and I think a lot of people's brains, if we think about this object here, kind of talking about this top right corner, and that the settings we're going to put in here, we want to apply to this top right corner. So let's set that reference point here in this little matrix, top right corner. Down here, where it says the X value should be relative to, we're going to choose from this drop down and choose anchor marker. So this value should be relative to the marker that we're putting right here. So don't freak out if this sounds crazy. I promise. InDesign's making it seem more complicated here than it is. Now we can move things around with these numbers down here. Now, how do we know the right numbers here? Well, for one thing, we want to turn on our preview. And look what happened. It jumped way down here, and that's not what we want. So now we just make adjustments until the image ends up where we want it. So let's start with the Y offset. We've got this set to be relative to the baseline. And because it's the Y axis, when we make changes here, it's going to move the graphic up or down. So we just make adjustments until we've got it in the vertical position where we want it. So now let's work on the X axis. So just like in math class, this is telling InDesign the coordinates for the reference point relative to the anchor marker along the X axis. So when we make changes here, the graphic's going to move left or right. Let's set the X offset value to 0.1875. All right, then we're going to click OK. Now, what does that mean? Let's come over here and take our text frame and watch what happens if we make it narrower. So instead of the text frame lining up with the left side of this M, let's drag it in till it lines up with the right side of the M. And look at that.
this moved along with it because it is anchored to the invisible little anchor here. And actually, if we zoom in on this, so you can press Command or Control +++ and zoom in. If we want to see the actual anchor that's in the text, we can go to the Type menu and choose Show Hidden Characters. And look at that. Now we can see all the invisible things that are actually in our type. So for example, here is a little pilcrow paragraph symbol, which lets us know that there's a return here. This is the end of a paragraph. Here we see another one and another one here. And if you really look in here, we can see all the little dots. These are spaces between words. So it's really easy to tell if you've got double spaces anywhere. And this right here, this little symbol, which looks like the symbol for Japanese yen, this symbol in this case is the anchor. So this is the spot where this image is anchored. Cool, right? Now don't worry, we're not going to repeat all that tedium for these other images. Like with many things in InDesign, there is a better way. So before we move on, let's save our work, Command or Control S, and I'll see you in the next video. Before we move on, I wanted to jump in real quick and show you something that we just didn't need in any of our projects, but I want to make sure that you know it exists for those moments when you may find yourself needing it. And that thing is called Generative Expand here in InDesign. So as we've learned in InDesign, we can have frames like this, and then we can put images in the frames. And so far, and throughout the course actually, the images are all going to work great in the frames the way we need them, but that's not always the case. So let me show you what I mean. If I grab this picture of Tai Calathea and I put him in this frame, this is a very tall and vertical photo, and the frame is the complete opposite. It's very narrow and horizontal. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. So let's just say, for the sake of learning, that we have this picture of Tai Calathea and we need to use it in a layout where it needs to be horizontal like this. And we need to fill some area over here. Obviously, we can enlarge the image, but then we may not like the composition. So generally, if we wanted to keep the composition as it is, but basically just fill in this area, normally we would go to Photoshop and then we would, try and edit this and then bring it back over and all of that. But we don't have to do all of that anymore. So we can select the frame here in InDesign. And if we go to the window menu and we choose text to image, we'll get this little menu here. And then from this drop down, there's a list of several options. The one we're looking at here is called Generative Expand. And we can just leave the prompt blank and we'll just click Generate. InDesign's going to give us 3 variations to choose from, and it's going to keep the image like this, but it's going to fill in this empty area. All right, so here is the first variation. Looks pretty good, but I don't know what that is. Here is a second option, nice, and a third option. I definitely think this second one is the best. So that's kind of all there is to it. We've got these 3 different versions here. So that looks good. Sometimes you may notice that if you click through on these different variations and then you mouse over your image, you may end up with a loaded cursor, almost like it's going to place a second instance of the image on top of itself. So I don't know. I think it's kind of buggy yet. So I can't say I really use it a lot, but I just wanted you to know about it. If you end up with a loaded cursor, I'm trying to get it to do it now. Oh, there it is. See this? There's my loaded cursor. So you can either press escape to clear the cursor or just Alt or Option click to place that image in the frame, replacing the previous one. So yeah, kind of goofy. But the important thing to know about what's happening in the background is that we have not altered our original photo of Tai Calathea.
that is still safe on our hard drive in our project folder. So if I go back, here it is. So you can see it's still vertical and it still ends before the shadow right here. So it's not editing that file. What it is doing is making a copy of it in a super weird place. And the way we figure that out is by looking in the links panel. So here in the links panel, we can see that this file name does not match this one. Our original file name can be seen here, and now it's called Gen AI and a bunch of gibberish. Also, this file is here in my course files folder, and this image that's in InDesign now is located, if I hover here, you can see the file path. It is in my documents folder in a folder called InDesign Gen AI Assets. So if I right click on this and I choose Reveal in Finder, it's going to show me this folder alongside all the other images that I've generated in InDesign. And I know I just told you I don't use it a lot. This has all been for just testing and playing with it. But if we go up a folder, you can see it just made this folder in my documents folder and just put it there. So it's kind of awkward how that works. It's not a big deal. And coming up, we're going to learn about how to package up all of your links and all of your graphics and things that are in your image. So it's not a big deal that this is in a random folder. It's just, I point it out so that you're aware of it, because I didn't expect that. I don't know what I expected when this feature came out, but I didn't know it was going to be that. I guess I would have thought it would have just generated this and put it next to the source image that I placed in the beginning, but that's not how InDesign handles it, at least not now. So there you go. That is a little overview of generative expand here in InDesign. So just like we created paragraph styles to handle our text, we're going to create an object style to handle this anchoring business so we don't have to go through that again for these other 3 images. So with this image selected, let's open up our object styles panel. So we'll go to the window menu, and under styles, just like we have paragraph styles and character styles, we also have object styles. And because we're going to use this again, let's dock it somewhere over here in whatever spot you like. This is the little icon for it. Okay. So now that we've got this set the way we want, we're going to slurp up those settings into an object style. The process is just like we learned for paragraph styles. So to save us an extra click, we're going to hold down Alt or Option while we click the new style button. That pulls up this dialog here, and we're going to call it anchored object. We're not going to base it on anything. Now, here's what's kind of fussy about InDesign is it's asking us which attributes we want to slurp up into this anchored object style. And by default, it wants to suck up everything. So if we scroll through here, you'll see that there's check marks next to almost everything. And we don't want that because we want this object style to only be about the anchor settings. So we don't care about fill or stroke or corner options, etc. So we could come through here and manually remove all these check marks, turning them into dashes. So the check mark means that those settings are going to get slurped into the style. And a dash means InDesign's going to ignore them. But you can see there's a lot of settings here. So that kind of sucks. So I'm going to put these back. And what we can do instead to save a little time is if we scroll down here and find the one thing we do care about, which in this case are the anchored object options that we set up already. So instead of unchecking everything except this, if we hold down Alt or Option and we just double click on the setting that we do want to slurp, it's going to set dashes to everything else except where we double clicked. That is a huge hidden trick. I'm not sure a lot of people know about this, but that's pretty awesome. So this is the one we care about. We can ignore everything else. Then, just like with our paragraph styles, we want to make sure that we do apply this style to the object that we slurped all the settings from, because we want to make sure that it also gets tagged with this style. And then we can just click OK. So now that is our anchored object style. So our next step is going to be to anchor these other objects, but don't worry, it's going to be super easy now. We're going to click to select this frame. And because we have these anchored object settings already in place, we don't have to worry about Alt or Option clicking to get our options here. We're just going to anchor it, and it's not going to be right for the moment. That's okay. So we're going to click and drag that blue little anchor until it's here to the left of the L in Liz. Nothing moves or changes, but we see that it is anchored. Then we'll come down here for Lynn, click and drag that blue little dot right over there. And same for Ty, click and drag the blue little dot. So now they're anchored, but we haven't applied the style to them yet. And we want them all to be anchored with the same kind of settings that this one is. So we'll just go through them one at a time. We'll select Liz right here. And instead of having none for the object style, we're going to click Anchored Object. And boom, it moves into just the right spot. Then we'll grab Lynn's picture, which has already been anchored, but the options haven't been set. We'll apply the Anchor Object settings. Boom. And of course, Ty, same thing. Anchor that object. So the benefit of all of this is, let's say that we're going to add some more text here to Liz and her little blurb. So I'm going to put my cursor in here, and let's add a space at the end, and let's type, rumor has it her collection numbers in the hundreds, period. Like her collection of plants, right? And did you notice what happened? That as we typed that out, instead of having to manually go and reposition everybody else down here, they flowed along with the text that they're anchored to. Let's come down here to Lynn's text. And if we click to put our cursor here and we add a space, let's add another sentence for her. Hasn't met a plant she couldn't tame, period. Awesome. Let's press the escape key to get our cursor out of there. And now we have our frame selected. And now if we drag that frame a little bit wider, the graphics will move with it. So this is different than if we had just simply grouped them. So that's the benefit of anchored objects. We'll look at two other types of anchored objects later in this course. For right now, though, let's quickly do a better job of composing these images within their frames. So with our very important selection tool, we can double click on Erica Jade here, move her up so that that's a little better. I'm holding the Shift key to make it easy to just drag straight up and not get out of alignment like this. Same over here with Liz Flowers. We're double clicking to select the content within the frame, and I'll hold the Shift key so I can just pull her straight down a little bit so she's not falling out of the top of the frame. I think Lynn seems like pretty good just where she's at. Ty, double click on Ty. Ty needs to move up and probably be scaled. So let's hold the Shift key while we drag from this top right corner to enlarge him a little bit so we can see him better. And let's see how we're looking. Let's make sure we don't have anything selected by pressing Shift, Command, or Control A. And then let's get into wonderful mode with the W key. Nice. Page 1 is rockin'. Press Command or Control S to save your work, and I'll see ya in the next video. Before we move on, let's take care of two housekeeping things. One, if you like looking at all of these little hidden characters, awesome.
I like to turn them on when I need them and off when I don't. So I'm going to go back to the type menu and choose hide hidden characters. The other thing is you'll notice a couple of these paragraphs, at least in mine, because again, yours could be different if your text column is slightly a different size than mine. But here I can see that I've got some hyphenation happening in 2 of these paragraphs, and I don't want that. And we definitely don't want to come in here and manually break lines. So this is an example of where all we have to do is update the paragraph style for this text. So if you recall, this text here is our body copy. Let's make a simple one-click edit to our body copy to turn off this hyphenation. One of the ways to do that is to come into this paragraph and we come up here to the control panel and we go into the paragraph formatting controls. Here we'll see an option for hyphenate. Let's uncheck that and you'll see that the hyphen goes away. Of course, we've made a change to the text now that was previously tagged with the body copy style. So let's look at our paragraph style panel and you'll notice that it's still tagged with body, but now it's got this little plus, which of course means override. So that means there's something different about this paragraph of body copy than this. So if I put my cursor up here, it says, hey, body copy. But here it says, ooh, something's different. And yeah, something's different because we told it not to hyphenate. So previously I showed you what happens if we clear the overrides. But in this case, what we want to do is we want the settings for this paragraph without the hyphenation. We want those settings to replace the current settings for our body style. One way we can do that is with that override, we're just going to right click and we're going to say, redefine the body style based on this text that our cursor is currently in. So we'll say redefine, and not only does that make the override go away, but now it has actually redefined the style, which means that the other hyphen that was down here is now gone because we've incorporated that non-hyphenation setting into the body style. Pretty cool, huh? We'll learn more about editing styles later, as well as more ways to work with different types of anchored objects. But for now, let's check out how awesome page 1 is looking by making sure we don't have anything selected. We'll press Shift, Command, or Control A, and then let's press W to check it out in wonderful mode, to hide all the guides and margins and all that stuff, and wow. Make sure you save your work by pressing Command or Control S, and I'll see you in the next video. Moving on to page 2, there's a couple different ways we can get to it. We can toggle to our hand tool by pressing and holding the space bar, and then we can drag down to page 2, and when we let go of the space bar, we are back to our very important selection tool. Or another way, if we've got our Pages panel open, which can always be found, like all the other panels for the most part, under the window menu right here, we can jump to different pages in our document from the Pages panel. So in this case, we could just double click on page 2, and here we are. Now, of course, you might be wondering, hey, what happened to all those guides that we spent so much time placing here? Well, we're in wonderful mode, and that hides all of those things like guides. So we need to get out of wonderful mode by pressing W on our keyboard. So just like with page 1, we're going to start by placing our graphics first. So you can choose File Place or use the keyboard and press Command or Control D to drop in our graphics. So the images we'll be using are this file called blackleaf.ai. That's an Illustrator file. I'm going to hold down Command or Control to also select this picture of the flower petals by Eugene Golovs. Also, that's an Unsplash image, as well as this leaf PSD file. We don't need to include import options and click open.
Let's use our arrow keys and arrow over till we've got this image active. Now this image, we're gonna place it so it fills this whole left panel. So this is gonna be the inside of the brochure. And if you're looking at the brochure, you have the whole thing opened. This will be over here on the far left. So because we want this to reach up here to the edges, but we also want a well-trimmed edge, we're gonna go all the way to the bleed right here, and then click and drag, and we'll hold shift to unlock those proportions and come all the way down to the bleed at the bottom. And then we want to reach this all the way up to this fold line right here between the two panels. And then we can let go. Next, I'm going to arrow over till I see this little black leaf and something about here-ish. I'm going to click and drag, and I want this one to spill over a little bit into the other panel. So I'm holding shift to unlock that as well, and maybe about like that. And finally, this one's gonna go up here about like this. And here's another little tip is as long as you're still holding your mouse down and you decide you want to scooch this over, don't let go of your mouse. And if you add the space bar, it kind of unsticks it, and then you can drag it around. And then wherever you are when you let go of the space bar, then you can continue to resize it from there. So the trick is to just not let go of your mouse until you're done. It's a lot like a game of Twister. So maybe something like this, and I'll let go. All right, so this is pretty good. The idea here is that I want these to cross over from one panel into the other. So you can fine tune them a little bit, and we may end up moving them a little more once we get our text in here. Now this one, I want to rotate it a little bit. So with the selection tool, I've got it selected. All we have to do to rotate it is hover our cursor outside one of these corners. And you see how you get this double-headed arrow? Then you can just click and drag to give it a little spin. And I think I'm gonna move it up a little bit, something about like that. Again, we'll fine tune all that later. So this is great. We placed a JPEG, a PSD, and an Illustrator file down here. And I just want to show you, just for your own knowledge and know-how, because when you are placing images, sometimes it makes a difference the way you bring them in. So because we brought this guy in through File, Place, you can see when I select it here, I am not able to access any of the color information in this vector file. So it's here the same way this JPEG is here or this PSD is here. I can't access this, but just so you know, so you don't have to do this, but I just want to show you. If instead of placing this, if I had first opened this in Illustrator, so now I'm looking at Illustrator here, and if I had selected it and copied it and gone back to InDesign and then pasted it, I still have the vector data. So this is still a vector file, same as this one. But look at this. Now when I select it, I get the color info. So we can see here that it has a black fill, or up here in the control panel, it has a black fill. And that means if we wanted to change it for whatever reason, maybe we want to give it a different color, we could come in here and now we could change the color. It's the same file. The difference is this one was placed and this one was copied and pasted. So both of them have their advantages and their drawbacks. For example, now that this is copy and pasted, it doesn't show up in the links panel, which means if this file got updated somewhere, it wouldn't update here in InDesign. So if we look at our links panel and pull this down a little bit, you can see that this version of it doesn't show up here. So it's a free agent, it's unlinked, whereas this one is right here and it's linked. So if this was a logo that got updated somewhere, it could very easily be updated here in InDesign. Like I said, both scenarios have advantages and disadvantages, but I just wanted to point that out. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. We'll leave this guy here so we all have the same setup, regardless of whether you have Illustrator or not. Pretty cool though, right? Let's save our work and I'll see you in the next video. So in this video, we're gonna place some more text and learn about the difference between paragraph styles and character styles. Previously, up on page 1, when we brought in this text, we copied and pasted it from a text file. This time, just to learn another way of doing things, we are going to place the text file itself. So we can choose File, Place, or we can press Command or Control D, and we're gonna navigate to the text file called official. So official.txt. This time, we do want to enable show import options, and then we'll click open. So because this is a text file, it's showing us some text import options to go with it. For example, we can choose which character set we're going to use to bring in this text. We want to set it here to Unicode UTF-8. Everything else can stay the same. Just want to point out, when you bring text in this way, you can do some extra things, like if you know you've got extra returns at the end of every line or between paragraphs, you can have that cleaned up when you bring it in. So that can be really helpful sometimes. Then we'll go ahead and click OK, and here's our loaded cursor. So we just need to draw a text frame, and we want to make sure that the text frame reaches all the way from this margin here on the left to this margin on the right. Now let's zoom in a little bit so we can see what we're doing. I'm going to press Command or Control plus to scooch in a bit, and check out how easy it's going to be to style this text, because we've already created the paragraph styles that we're going to use. To assign them, we need to insert our cursor into the text. So we want to make sure we have our type tool, and then we can just click to insert our cursor into this text right up here. It's official. That's going to be the H1 style. So we can open up our paragraph style panel. If you've lost it somehow, you'll find it under Window, Styles, Paragraph Styles. Then all we have to do to style this is click H1 to apply that style. Next, we're going to highlight all of the text here from Welcome to your plant era all the way through the end of the line where it says, Need support? We're here for you. This is going to get the body copy style. So we'll come over here and click to apply the body style. We can see that there is somehow an extra space right here. So let's put our cursor in there and delete it. And there seems to be another space right here. So let's delete that too. We're going to style this chunk of text in another video shortly. So for right now, we're just going to focus on this. So we've already applied the H1 style and the body style. So what happens if we come in here and we decide we want this Welcome to your plant era to be bold? So we're going to highlight it. And if we come up in here to our control panel, we want to make sure we're in the character formatting options. And we're going to change the font from Montserrat Light to bold. You'll notice the minute we did that, we got one of those pesky little override symbols showing up next to the style in this paragraph. So that tells us there's something about this paragraph that does not fit the attributes that are assigned to it. If we click in the second paragraph, you can see that override goes away. Before we address that, let's add another bold right here where it says keep it simple. So again, highlight this text, come up to the control panel or the properties panel if you like to work that way. And we're going to change that from Montserrat Light to Montserrat Bold. And look at that, we get another override. So this is where character styles come into play, because as we work through this simple document, it's just a little brochure. It's not a huge big deal to manually have all these bolds in here. But the best practice for handling these overrides to our paragraph text is to do it with a character style. So for right now, let's remove the bold right here. So where it says keep it simple, let's set that back to light. And you'll notice the override goes away. So what we need to do is create a style that we can use to make things bold, even when they're within a paragraph like this. Now, let's go back up here and let's highlight this bold text, which is throwing us an override to the paragraph style. But now we're going to create a character style to handle the bold. So for that, we need to go to our character style panel. Conveniently, InDesign usually groups them together. So you'll notice we don't have any character styles right now. So we're going to create one. Just like we've done with paragraph styles and object styles, we're going to select the text that we've already styled with the attributes that we want to slurp in to our style. We're going to hold Alt or Option and click the New Style button. And we're just simply going to call this style bold. That's all there is to it. That's all it's going to do, is it's going to take text and it's going to bold it. We don't even care what font is selected. We don't have a font selected. We're not even specifying a font because actually the font choice is being handled by the paragraph style. We're only specifying that whatever the font is, it's going to be bold. So back here under the general settings, now that we've named it, we want to make sure that we click to apply this character style to that selected text, and we're going to click OK. So now we have a character style called bold. This looks the same. It's just bold. But check this out. If we go back to the paragraph styles, the override is gone. Because now InDesign knows this is a paragraph style that looks like body, and this bold little bit has like special permission from the character styles panel to be bold. And so it's not upset anymore and the little override is gone. So now if we come down here and we highlight keep it simple, and I'm going to include the period here at the end. And now if we want to make this bold also, instead of coming up here and just manually putting in some bold, instead, we go to the character styles panel and we tag it with bold. And now again, if we look back with our paragraph styles, there's no override. In a way, these character styles are kind of like giving your text a free pass to do something a little bit different than what's going on in the rest of the paragraph. So let's do one more up here and highlight the word lot. But this time, instead of bold, let's italicize it. So again, the easiest way to set up styles is to just make it what we want to look like here and then slurp it in. So let's come up to our control panel, and instead of Montserrat Light, we're going to change it to italic, which of course, if we go to our paragraph styles, ooh, pesky, we have got a little override. We're going to take care of that by making a character style. So again, with our text styled and highlighted, we're going to hold Alt or Option, click to make a new style, and we'll call this one italic. And again, under basic character formats, doesn't matter. All we care about is that it's italic. The font choice is being handled by the paragraph style settings. Got to make sure under general, we got to go back and make sure that we have it checked here to apply the style to the selection. We click OK. And if we peek back at our paragraph styles panel now, the override is gone. So that is how paragraph styles and character styles work together. You style the overall text using paragraph styles, and anytime you want to have a little override, like maybe you want to change the color of a few words in a paragraph, or make it bold or italic, you can give it permission to behave a little bit differently by creating and assigning a character style. Don't forget to save your work, and I'll be waiting for you in the next video. All right, are you feeling ready to tackle bulleted lists? Let's do it. First thing we want to do is give this text frame some more room. So I'm going to grab the selection tool and just extend this text frame all the way down to this margin. Next, this text here that says join us for, this needs to be styled with an H1 paragraph style. So let's press T for the type tool, click to insert our cursor anywhere into this line. Now we think of this as just a single line, but it is a paragraph. So we want to insert our cursor into that paragraph, open up our paragraph style panel, and tag it with H1. And these are the list items that we're going to turn into a bulleted list. So let's select these items, and for now, let's just assign them the body paragraph style. So far, so good. All right, so for this next part, it's really important that we actually don't highlight the whole item, the whole list item. We just want to insert our cursor into this paragraph. If we want to make this a bullet, we could come up here in our control panel, and in the character formatting, it's way over here on the far right. So I'm not sure if this shows up on everyone's monitor or if it depends what your setup is, but I can see the bulleted list item right here. If you don't see it, you can also find it in your properties panel right here, or up here again in the control panel. If we go all the way to the left and switch over to paragraph formatting options, then it shows up here in about the middle. So take your pick. You'll notice if we just click and make this a bullet, two things happen. One, that is a terrible looking bullet, and it doesn't appear we have any options to change that. And two, of course, we get an override because we've just tagged this as body copy, and now we've gone ahead and bulleted this. So what we're going to do is make a better looking bullet setup, and then we're going to create a new paragraph style for a bulleted list. So for now, we can unbullet this by clicking the bullet list again. And instead of clicking and unclicking to make that bullet, we're going to reveal some additional options by holding down the Alt or Option key and clicking on that bullet button. So this is going to add a bullet, but here we have all kinds of ways we can make a way better looking bullet. So for starters, make sure you can move this over so you can see what we're doing over here and see this panel at the same time. So up here at the top where it says list type, it's currently set to none, not very helpful. Let's change it to bullets. And here we get that ugly, tiny, microscopic bullet. You really need like a magnifying glass to look at that thing. So we have some other options here that we could choose from. So maybe you want to have a little diamond bullet or this double arrow bullet. Those are all cool, but we can actually add any character from any font that we want. So let's click add. And down here under font family, we're going to type ITC space ZAP, Z-A-P-F. So this is going to bring up the ITC ZAP Dingbats font. And then press tab. That will change over the font. Now this font, if you followed along and set up everything at the beginning, you should already have this font installed or activated. So now we're going to come up here, and I like this really big, thick, chunky, bold X. So if we hover over this, we see that this character is called heavy multiplication. And I think that's perfect for this bold brand. So I'm going to select that. Now it's tempting to just say, okay. But if we do that, this window closes and nothing happens. So what we want to do is click add, and then we can click OK. And now we see that that bullet character shows up in our little list here, and we can click to select it. That looks a lot better already, doesn't it? This area here we'll learn more about when we do numbering. So for right now, just leave this alone. But what if we decide that we want this bullet to have a different color, and a color that's different than the text for the item itself? So we're going to leave this text black, but it turns out the only way we can style or change the color of this bullet is with a character style. Because remember, ultimately, this whole bullet setup is going to become a paragraph style. And if we want the bullet to be a different color than the the text itself, that creates that override situation. And then we're going to need a hall pass or a permission slip. So we do that with the character style. So if we click our drop down, of course, we see a list of options. We've already created an italic style and a bold style. And here we get the chance to create a whole new character style right here and now. So that's what we're going to do. We'll give it a brilliant name like Pink Bullet. And from the list of options over here on the left, we're going to choose character color. And now we get access to our color settings. And we can scroll down and pick this pink color here. You'll notice if we drag this out of the way, we're not seeing any of this. Even if we turn on preview, we're not going to see it right here yet. But we will click OK, and then it will show up. Look how much better that looks already. So we created a bulleted list by Alt or Option clicking on our little bullet button. We added our own bullet. We created a pink bullet character style to give it permission to do something different than the rest of the paragraph. And it's also the only way to change how the bullets actually look. And now we're going to deal with the positioning and alignment and all of that. So down here in this area, let's bump the left indent to 0.25. And we're going to change this tab position here to 0.3125. And then we'll click OK. Now, just as expected, we've got an override situation because we tagged this with body copy style. And then we went all fancy and turned it into a bulleted list item. So of course, we've got an override. And in this case, we're going to deal with that by just creating a whole different paragraph style for our bulleted list items. So all we have to do is Alt or Option click the Create New Paragraph Style button, and we'll call it Bulleted List. Now here's something we haven't done yet before, is down here where it says based on. All the paragraph styles we've created so far have been based on no paragraph style. So they were like totally independent. But in this case, we want this text here to be the same style as the body copy, right? I mean, we want it to be bulleted, but we want it to look like bulleted body copy. And let's imagine that sometime down the line, somebody, some art director, a client, somebody somewhere says, hey, we don't want this to be Montserrat anymore. We want it to be Helvetica. Well, then we'd have to change the body copy style and we'd have to come and change the bulleted list style, unless we base the bulleted list style on the body style. See what I'm saying? Then if we change the font in the body style to something else, it will automatically update in the bulleted list style too. And that is an example of how powerful these styles are. So I know it can sometimes feel overwhelming and you're like, ugh, this is crazy. I just want to format things my way. But you will quickly see that working with paragraph styles and character styles saves you so much time, and it really makes less room for error in your documents. So this is a good habit to get into. All right, we want to make sure that this bulleted list style gets applied to the active text where our cursor is. So we're going to click OK. And now we can select the rest of this text and apply the same bulleted list style. Ta-da! That looks awesome. Our client is going to be so impressed with your fancy pink bullets. Save your work and meet me in the next video. All right, we are getting close to the finish line for our beautiful brochure. This next little section is going to have a fun little multiple choice quiz to help educate new plant parents or potential plant parents. So we're going to drop another chunk of text in here, and I can see before I do that, I can see I have my cursor active over here. So I want to get it out of there before moving forward. So I could press Escape. That will get my cursor out of there and select the type frame. And if I want to make sure I don't have anything selected, I can hold down Shift, Command or Control, and tap A. Next, let's bring in another chunk of text by pressing Command or Control D to drop it in here. And the text we're looking for is called leafylearning.txt. We can show our import options. And just like last time, we're going to make sure we set this to Unicode UTF-8. If you place this in here and you end up with some unrecognizable text, then this could be why. So you want to make sure you have it set here. We can leave all this stuff alone and just click OK. There's our loaded cursor, and let's click and drag from these inner margins to make a text frame. So the top line right here, Leafy Learning, is going to be another H1 head. So we want to insert our cursor here by switching to the type tool. So I'm going to press the letter T rather than going all the way over here to grab the type tool, and click to insert our cursor there. And in our paragraph styles panel, we're going to click H1. And just like we did over here, let's select all of this text and tag it as body for right now. So the idea is that this is going to be like little multiple choice bit. So here we have a question. The first question says the number one killer of houseplants is, and that's followed by 3 multiple choice options. Then there's another question and 3 more options, and a third question and 3 more options. And then these are the correct answers down here. So what we're going to do is create a pair of list paragraph styles to handle the different formatting for the questions and the answers. So ultimately, we're going to work with one list with 2 levels. It's going to have one level to handle the formatting and the numbering for the questions, and it's going to have another level to handle the multiple choice answers. So it'll say A, B, and C, just like when you were back in grade school. And each level gets its own paragraph style. It'll make sense when we get into it. So we're going to start with the question right here. So we can just insert our cursor in here. And just like before, when we added the bulleted list, this time we're going to go to the numbered list. So wherever you decided to access the bulleted list button, you'll find the numbered list right next to it. And instead of just clicking on it, again, we want all the fancy features and options. So we're going to hold Alt or Option and then click on it. And look at that. We even get the same dialog box. So now we can choose what type of list we're trying to make. Last time we made a bulleted list. This time we're talking about a numbered list. We'll leave the list set to default. InDesign gives you the opportunity to define multiple lists within a document, but we're just going to be working with the default list. And as we will see later, we will be creating a list with 2 levels. This that we're working on right now is going to be level 1. So we'll leave that set to 1. We want the format to just be numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4. And here we can specify what kind of character we want to follow the number. So the default is to have the number followed by a period, but I'd like to change that to a parentheses. So the way we do that is we come in here to what looks like garbledygook, but this is code, and we just put our cursor in and backspace to delete the period, and I'm going to put in a parentheses there, and as soon as we hit tab, you'll see it update over here, assuming you have that preview option turned on. All right, now, just like with the bullet, it's asking us what character style we might want to apply to this number. And in this case, I just want it to be bold. And we've already created that bold character style, so we can just select it from the list. Here, where it asks us the mode for the numbering, we can either give it a specific number to start at, or we can choose continue from previous number. So we're going to leave this set to continue from previous number. Down here, we can adjust the alignment options again. This time, I think the number is okay where it is, but I do want the text to be closer to it. So let's drop this tab position down to 0.25 inches. That looks good. We can click OK. And just like we saw over here with the bullets, because we've now taken this text that was previously tagged with the body style and we've applied numbering to it, we get an override. So before we make this into a new paragraph style, let's select the text here and let's make that bold. But this time we're going to bake the boldness into the paragraph style. So let's come up here to character formatting and make it bold. And now we're going to slurp all of this into a new paragraph style. So that will include the fact that this is bold and that it is numbered. So in our paragraph style panel with our cursor active right here, we're going to hold Alt or Option and click to create a new style. And we're going to call this one numbered list : cues for questions. And just like we did with the bullets, we want to base this style on the body style. So that again, if we change our body style font, it will automatically update in both the bullets and our numbered lists over here. We want to make sure we apply the style to the selection and we'll click OK. So now we've created our first numbered list. For now, let's save our work. And when you're ready, join me in the next video. So previously, we built our numbered list here to tackle our questions in our little multiple choice section. In this video, we're going to make a numbered list to tackle the answers, but instead of numbers, they're going to be letters like A, B, and C. But even still, they're still considered a numbered list. So let's check this out. We want to start by putting our cursor in this first option for the answer. So in this case, underwatering is going to be our answer choice A. And just like we've done before, go back to where we have this button for bullets and numbering and Alt or Option click to bring up this dialog. And again, we're going to choose a numbered list. Again, the list is going to be the default, but here, this is where we're going to change it to be level 2. So the question is the part of the list that's level 1, and the answer is going to be level 2. And instead of formatting the answers with numbers, as you expect in a numbers list, we're going to click this drop down and you'll notice we can also choose letters. So we can actually have a numbered list with letters. This time, I do want to keep the period, so let's do that. And for the character style, we'll leave that set to none. So here we want to make sure the mode is set to continue from previous, which means this answer will be A, the next answer will continue, meaning it'll be B, and this will be C. But we also want to make sure that that numbering, or in this case lettering, starts over again after the next question. So because this is level 2, if we go back to level 1, you see it's grayed out. But because this is level 2, there's this option to tell it to restart the numbers, or in this case, the letters, anytime that the list is interrupted with any previous level, in this case, level 1. So this is what's telling InDesign to restart the lettering after every time there's another interruption by a new question. Down here, we want to adjust the alignment a little bit. So let's bring the left indent, bump the left indent up to 0.25. And we can leave the tab position where it is, and we'll click OK. So now that we've got our style created, we just have to apply it. So this is already tagged as being answers. So these two paragraphs, these are also answers. So look at that. They automatically become B's and C's. This right here is another question. So we'll tag it as numbered list question. And these three things are again answers or possible answers. So we'll tag them as answers. And here's where, remember this magical option that was in here to restart the numbers at this level after basically being interrupted with any other previous level? That is what is telling this to restart. So it continues from the previous number or letter. So A, B, C, and if we hit return, we would get D, E, F, G. It would just keep going. But the minute it gets interrupted by this right here, this level 1 from the same list, when this interrupts, this option is telling this level 2 section to start numbering over again, which in this case means lettering. But isn't it amazing? Okay, so let's keep going. So this right here will also become a question. And these three right here, these three things are answers, possible answers. Now we have some overset text down here. And what we should really do is tidy up the spacing of this a little bit. Let's put our cursor up here in the question. And what I'd like to do is actually reduce the spacing between the question and the answer that's down here. So to do that, let's come up here into the control panel. And I'm looking at my character formats. And over here, we see this little icon representing our settings for the spacing following a paragraph. And I'm seeing we've got a 1/4 inch of space there. That's too much. So let's reduce that down to, let's say, 0.0625. So now we've made a change to the styling, to the settings for that paragraph style. So we've got that override. But because we just want to actually keep this override and rewrite the style, all we have to do is right click and choose redefine style. Not only will that get rid of the override, but now we've updated the style to include the new spacing, and everything else tagged with that style also updates. Now, if we put our cursor here, I think the answers have the same issue. However, these and the spacing between these are all spacing between paragraphs with the same style, repeating. So in this case, what we want to do is put our cursor up here, and instead of adjusting the space after, we want to adjust this. This is the spacing between paragraphs that have the same style applied. So here we can reduce this to that same 0.0625. And again, we're going to get another override, and we're going to right click and we're going to say redefine. And it's going to tuck all of that in much more nicely, and that looks great. While we're at it, I think we can tighten up the spacing here for the bullets as well. So let's click to put our cursor there in our bulleted list. And again, because we're talking about spacing between a series of paragraphs that are all tagged with the same style, the spacing we want to work with is not the space after, but the space between paragraphs with the same style. So if we hover on this, you see it says space between paragraphs that use the same style. So let's tuck this up again to that 0.0625. That looks good, but of course, that's just a local adjustment right here. So to apply this to all of the other paragraphs tagged with that same style, you guessed it, we'll need to redefine the style. So we do that by right-clicking and choosing to redefine the style. Isn't that neat? And it all just tucks right up there. All right, finally then we have our answers to our little quiz right here. But we can't make it this easy to see the answers. So let's make it at least a little tricky by putting them in their own text frame, and then we'll turn them upside down. So let's get our selection tool here. And remember how this works? Just drag this frame so that that text disappears. So we get this overset option, and then we can click to take that overset type, and we'll draw a new frame to put it in. And now we can take this frame and rotate it upside down. So these frames are threaded. Remember, here's the output coming into the import here. We don't see the thread unless we go to the view menu and choose extras, show text threads. Now we can see it, but that's a lot sometimes. So I'm going to turn that back off. View extras, hide text threads. All right, so now we've got this box here, and we could hover out here and we could rotate it. And if we hold shift, it'll snap neatly 180 degrees. So it's like this. I'm going to undo that so that I can show you that we also have these buttons up here. So we can select this text frame and we can just hit right here. This rotates it 90 degrees to the left. And again, we'll make it another 90 degrees, which makes it upside down. And then I think let's actually line this up over here. At least this way it's a little more difficult to accidentally see the answer before you read through and do some leafy learning. As I'm looking at this, I'm just going to move this little leaf over a smidge, give a little more breathing room there. Let's zoom out to look at this whole page at once by pressing Command or Control and the number 0. I'm going to click away to just make sure I don't have anything selected, and then let's press W to look at it. And I'm noticing that this text, I think, is wider than I'd like it to be. So let's tuck this in a little bit. And hey, check it out. This looks awesome. I mean, wow, we covered so much. These are really powerful skills, and I hope you're proud of what you've accomplished so far. All right, so now that we built our trifold together, now it's your turn to use your brief for your client and create a trifold brochure. Here is a link to the Moo template that I referenced earlier in one of the earlier videos. So you can use that, or you could use these specs, or really anywhere where you find a legit trifold template from a legit vendor, then go for it. So here I just have the specs of 8.5 by 11. This is what we used in our practice build. So here I've just called out where all of the guides go, etc. So you want to make sure that you are building the guides, that you are setting up and using paragraph styles. So some sort of header, body, and a bulleted list, and then some bold or italic character styles as well. And when you're done, then you can just go ahead and export as a PDF for print. In this case, we do have a bleed, so you would definitely want to make sure you include that. And then you're going to just upload a JPEG to the course site. And of course, you can share on social media if you want. That's fun. Oh my gosh, you guys, this was a big project. So many things going on in here, but you are building those InDesign muscles. So good luck, and I can't wait to see what you make. All right, so as always, you want to make sure you save your InDesign document. Now, when it comes to getting this document to your printer, you always want to ask them what they want. Some printers are going to want InDesign documents. Others will take a PDF. So always, always, always check with them and be specific. Ask them exactly how they want that PDF baked. So knowing that this can vary dramatically depending on the situation, here's a general overview of some things to check for when making that PDF. So let's go to File, Export. We want to save this in our finished work folder, and we're going to choose PDF Print and click Save. So here, if you are sending this to a professional print shop, you're probably going to want to choose Press Quality, because that's going to have settings baked into it for the optimum output. In this example, I believe, looking at the template from Moo, I think they had a note in there that they want customers to use the PDF X1A preset. So if your printer tells you, yeah, just use whatever preset, then easy piece of cake. In this case, let's look at the press quality options. And so since this document has multiple pages, that's something you want to check to make sure you're exporting all the pages. Unless your printer asked for each page to be separate, like the template for Moo said, they want the inside of the brochure and the outside of the brochure to be uploaded separately. So then you'd want to come and repeat this process to export individual pages. So always make sure you've got it set right. I think after you export a PDF, I like to turn on the option to view the PDF to make sure it's the way you expect. If we look here under compression, you'll notice because we've set this to the press quality preset, it's going to take any images that are like crazy extra big and it's going to downsample the resolution to the standard 300 pixels per inch. Down here under marks and bleeds, you want to make sure to send the bleeds along with the document. And that's only going to happen if you click right here to include the bleed settings we set up for this document. If you don't check this box, which is not on by default, the PDF that you export will not include the bleeds. So you always, always, always want to double check this. Down here under output, managing the color, again, you always want to check to see what your printer wants. But we've got RGB images in here mixed with processed black and all kinds of things. So this is where we can tell InDesign how to handle all of those colors. So here it's going to take all those colors and it's going to convert them to the destination profile. And the destination profile is the document CMYK setting of US web-coded swap v2. And if all this sounds like confusing garbly-gook that doesn't make any sense, it's pretty technical printer output stuff. So remember, when in doubt, just ask your printer how to handle all this stuff. They'll tell you they want profiles included or they don't want profiles included. They fully expect designers to have questions. And you're really doing them a favor when you ask these questions ahead of time so you can build your file right, so there's less problems and less drama later. The rest of the stuff, I think we can leave as is. Again, this is all for our fictitious printer anyway. I think they are going to be happy with this. What's also cool is if you work with a particular printer over and over again, once you get everything set up the way that they've asked you to, you can create a new preset and click Save Preset, and then you could just call this Bob's Print Shop or whatever. And that way you don't have to mess with this every single time. So yeah, let's hit Export. And because we said we wanted to view the PDF afterwards, it's going to take a minute. And here it is. Look at that. Just what we've done so far, you already know more than a lot of people who use InDesign every day. And have been for years. So pat yourself on the back, be proud of what you've accomplished so far, and then roll up your sleeves because we're not done yet. Whew, you made it to the end of this video. Bravo for sticking with it. If you enjoyed it and you learned something, be sure to like and subscribe so you can see more videos like this. And I would love to know what tool or technique or little nugget of knowledge that you learned will have the biggest impact on the way you work. So spill the beans in the comments below. And remember, this isn't really goodbye. It only looks like this video is ending, but it's really just a sample of the full-sized course, just a tasting or a preview, if you will. If you want the full enchilada of all 10 plus hours of nutritionally dense InDesign goodness, join me for the full course. The link is in the description below, and I'm actually heading over there now. So are you gonna join me? I sure hope so. I'll keep an eye out for you.